I think you ought to know. That men's radio. The place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show. It's men's radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. Men's radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane and Phil Dave.
It's Friday. Actually, I shouldn't be so happy about Friday, you know. Oh, Russell, turn your mic on, oh boy. Unbelievable. He's turned his mic off. Can't hear him. And now he's lost connection altogether. Oh dear. Anyway, well, while Russ is trying to sort his microphone settings out, first and foremost, everybody, welcome to Friday's show here live on Men's Radio Station with, well, hopefully Russ Kane eventually. When once again he gets the technology sorted. This is the perils of working from home, you see. When you don't work in a studio environment, sometimes you get the occasional challenge comes up and there's no engineer to help you. Well, I mean, in my case, it's usually me, but anyway, let's be honest. Anyhow, this is the Daily Show here on Men's Radio Station, live with you until 2 o'clock this afternoon, which is always very exciting to be with you for 3 hours on a Friday. Russ, can we hear you now?
Hello, broadsword to Danny Boy. Broadsword to Danny Boy.
Excellent. At least we know it's live. At least we know it's live.
I tell you what, you ever got out of bed and you thought, this is going to be a really shitty day? You just, you put one foot on the bedroom carpet, you go, this is going to be, I've just got to get through today. I don't know. Like, it's just everything's
transmorphed into Tom.
Working.
You suddenly transmorphed into Tommy Cruise. I don't know. But anyway, still.
I went to the library the other day. I cut the bottom 4 inches off all my trousers. Gave it to the librarian and said, how's that for a turn up for the books?
Oh, God.
It's my favourite joke. I must be a very good driver. I got back to my car. There was a notice on it. It said, parking fine. I said, thank you very much.
Anyhow,
isn't that great?
Men's Radio.
If you like really good one-liners, there is a guy, I know he's very famous, but I only came across him very recently, called Gary. No, I like Stuart. No. I think much funnier. Stuart Francis is very good. Canadian one-liner. And then you got Milton Jones, wonderful one-liner. The ultimate being Tim Vine, who's just a comedy god. But there's a guy called Gary Delaney. Many of you may know him, but some of you may not know him. Gary Delaney. I don't know anything about him. And I was talking to my mate Danny Posthill about him. He's a brilliant impressionist comedian yesterday on the phone. Gary Delaney, if you want to laugh, look him up on YouTube. Oh, my God. You know when you're on your own, you're crying with laughter because it's that funny. Gary Delaney is his name. I thoroughly recommend it.
I'm quite lucky in that sense because I don't normally have to look at YouTube to make myself laugh. I just laugh at myself. I amuse myself, you see.
But are you laughing with yourself? Are you laughing at yourself?
Oh, no, totally laughing at myself.
But that's not nice. Laughing at somebody is not nice. Laughing with somebody is beautiful.
Nah, it toughens me up. Anyhow,
No. That's like that crap. That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The worst stupid phrase, and people churn it out like it's true. It's not true. That's which doesn't kill you, just makes you really gun shy.
Yeah, no, what I might suggest is that what we're supposed to take away from that particular expression is, of course, that one can learn lessons from whatever life throws at you. And if you live to tell the tale, then hopefully it helps to make your life that bit better. Or at least you're able to cope with life a bit better. Anyway, a really packed show for you today.
Yeah, it's huge today. And all our guests are important, but one, Phil's going to do the intro, but one is really very, very special. And you'll not want to miss this. I'm not saying that. Phil, do your beautiful thing. And I'm going to explain why it's important.
Oh, how very kind. Thank you. We're coming up at apparently.
You see, that's just rudeness. I do a nice thing and he just throws it into my face.
No, well, I mean,
Children. I'm disinheriting you.
No, but this is what I love about the seamlessness of this program. I don't take prompting at all. Coming up at 11:10 this morning. Coming up at 11:10, we're going to be meeting Luke Newman. Now,
11:10. I'm not awake yet. Come on, man.
This is why I'm trying to get on with the show. And you keep waffling.
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, right. So Luke Newman he's going to talk about anxiety and grief, frankly, off the back of it's a very serious story. From sadly losing both his mother and his sister to cancer. And we're very grateful he's here. We're very grateful he's here. Very, very brave of him to talk. And we're obviously going to hear much about his story a little later on. He's going to tell us a little bit sort of what he's done off the back of it, because it has inspired him to take action and not just do what many a lesser individual would do, frankly, which is just, unfortunately, let it get the better of you. And who could possibly blame you? Anyway, Luke's coming up in around about 5 minutes time from now. Then about midday today, we're going to be speaking to Kat or Kate. I'm not sure. I think it's Kate, actually.
Kate. It's Kate.
You see, because she's got a C, not a K. I don't understand. It's a bit like Sade and calling her Sadie. I don't understand it.
I think we could have called her Sadie. That was it. Robert Elms discovered her. That was his girlfriend, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Robert Elms' girlfriend, Sade.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't like names that lie either. Leanne rhymes. No, it doesn't. What a ridiculous notion. Anyway.
Did you think of that? That's hilarious.
Thank you very much. Anyway, we'll be speaking to Kate Mackenzie, with Kate with a C. We'll be joining a little later on. Now, Kate, Russell, behave yourself. No funny comments. Kate is actually a sex and relationship therapist. Now, in all the time...
Maybe she's phoning me for some advice.
Yeah, this is how not to do it. Anyway, Kate is going to be telling us a little later on about her world and her her particular line of work, I think is the best way of putting it. And I'm fairly sure that in all the time that we've done these programs here on Men's Radio Station, I don't actually think we've ever had anyone who is a sex therapist on before, apart from
We've had Pam on.
No, but Pam's got her own show. Pam does her own show. It doesn't count. It's like that. I'm talking on this program.
You know how we got Kate? It was her dad. We're getting her dad on to discuss some stuff. Did you not know this? Yeah, he was messaging me, and then he said, do you know my daughter? No. Waiting for alimony, waiting for alimony or something, and or child support. And I said, no, I don't know your daughter. And so I invited her. And she's very overexcited. She's been very active on social media. Wish all our guests were. Kill them.
Well, who wouldn't care for an active, accredited sex and relationship therapist who will be joining us at midday today?
You got your questions lined up?
I've got me Valium lined up, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how I'm going to handle this because I'm not very good at talking about intimacy. Anyway, but
you're not, are you? In all the years I've known you, do you know I know nothing about your private life?
I don't do that.
That's an amazing thing. This is true, everyone. I know nothing about Phil's private life. Interestingly, my business partner Howard, I know nothing about his private life. I've known Howard I've known Howard 30 years, probably 25, 30 years.
Wow.
Know nothing about Howard's private life.
Almost as long as I've been born.
Shut your stupid face.
Coming up at 1:00 this afternoon, Noel McDermott. Yes.
Oh, no, this is really important. This is very, very, very important.
Men's Radio Station's very own Noel McDermott will be speaking to us later on.
Yeah. And I tell you why this is important. Noel phoned me up. We had a very long, in-depth 45-minute discussion this week about that interview. Now, before you all go, Christ, I can't take another second. No, I am not going to even veer into that because I can't take another second of it, all right? And neither can you. We know that. And I don't want to give it any more airtime. Screw that. Screw it. But what Noel is saying, and this is the key thing, and this is where he and I were discussing this for 45 minutes, it's, you don't want to miss it. I'm not going to say any more. You really don't want to miss the discussion with Noel. Noel is probably the leading expert in suicide prevention in the United Kingdom. Trust me, that is going to be, along with mental health, that's going to be the hottest, most unpleasant topic going forward. Phil's been saying this since March 2020. He was right. Call him Mystic Meg. But don't miss Noel's interview. It's really going to be good. It might get a bit heated, by the way.
I prefer not to be called Mystic Meg, but yes, I hear what you're saying. And then coming up, of course, at 1:30.
Baptiste, then.
Thank you. Coming up at 1:30, of course, as we always do here on a Friday, is we'll be joined by the lovely Chantel Rickards, OBE, or OOB, as we like to call her.
She's in hair and makeup now. I've never known such an immaculate guest. She comes on, it's like, what the hell? I mean, I look like, I've been sleeping under a hedge.
Yeah, no, you've been growing a hedge. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Do you know what the problem was? Do you know what the problem was? I decided, I normally go to bed between 3 and 4 in the morning every time. That's my pattern. I go to bed at 3 or 4 in the morning. That's what I do. I can't help it. It's just how I am, right? Always been the same. So last night I thought, no, 3-hour show. I'm going to bed early. I feel terrible.
You don't suit sleep. It's clear to anyone who listens and who knows you don't suit sleep. Anywho, Chantel Rickards.
I don't suit early nights. I just don't.
Chantel Rickards will be joining us at 1:30 this afternoon to talk about all things pertaining to television. Just a little bit of light relief after what could be a very heavy couple of hours. But do you know what? This is what we do. We're radio for grown-ups and we tackle it. And for those of you who are listening on men's radio station, or indeed Deluxe Radio, by the way, you're very welcome. Holding up his T-shirt with a sign that says "Men's Radio Station, where men really talk." There you go. It's radio station for grown-ups, so it's radio for grown-ups. Well, I don't know.
You just read the bloody thing, Jesus.
You held it up too quickly. It's not my fault.
Come on, hurry up.
Right, men's radio station. It's radio for grown-ups. www.mensradiostation.com or at Men's Radio STN.
Now, gang, I had this made just for myself, just to amuse myself in these crazy times. Okay, if you would like, we're thinking about making some merchandise for you to purchase. Me and Penny have been talking about it. The great Penny Horner. Penny. So, the Queen of German Street Theatre. If you think you would like some merchandise, we will create it for you. We'd be happy to do so. All right, let us know. Let us know in the comments below. I never know what that means.
Well, quite.
Right, we've got so many comments here. Can we whip through some of these before our guest, or is our guest waiting?
Very, very quick, because our guest is very patiently waiting in the digital green room.
Then we'll do all the comments. Hi, gang.
I'm very impressed to say, actually, that sort of Luke Newman, who is poised as a spring, has been joining us since 11 o'clock this morning. Actually,
bless him.
Very, very patiently waiting in the digital green room. We're very sorry, Luke. The food's not much cop in the green room. We're sorry about that.
Oh, Paul Claridge. Hang on. No. Before we do that, Luke, bear with. Bear with. I used to love that. Good morning. It's Paul Claridge. I'll be tuned in wherever possible. I'm currently in the basement of King's College Hospital, awaiting a PET scan, a PET scan. No phone signal, but brilliant free Wi-Fi. Oh, and no ladders. Paul, I never like it when I hear you in a hospital. So fingers crossed. You're very special to us. You're incredibly brave. So let's just hope everything is okay.
Go, Paul.
Go, Paul. Martin, where eagles dare. Absolutely right. Martin Allen, broadsword to Gary Boy. Love. Oh, yeah, you're right. Martin Allen, Gary Delaney, I was talking about. He is a bit blue. I mean, some of it is rude. It's very rude, but it's very funny. And Emma Webb's been working hard on her training courses. She can stay for an hour and then go. Well, okay, that'll do. And Sue Cressman, the queen of Nailcoat Hall. Hello, boys and wonderful listeners of Men's Radio. I'll be here for a while, but awaiting a call from our MP. Stand by your beds. Why she's getting involved with the military police, I don't know. Hi, Sam Munro, Ed Grossman. All right, let's crack on with our first guest because it's an important one.
An excellent
idea. They all are, baby. They all are.
Now, Luke Newman, as I mentioned a little earlier on, if you have just joined us, by the way, it's The Daily Show with Russ, Kane and Phil Dave, live with you until 2 o'clock. Now, Luke Newman, who joins us now, has, I hate the word suffered, but it is possibly appropriate, but suffered with anxiety from, and the grief of losing both his mother and his sister to cancer. And we're sorry for the reason, but we're very pleased that Luke feels that he's able to talk to us about this, and he joins us on The Daily Show now. Luke, I mean it when I say it's a pleasure to have you on the show, but make no mistake, we obviously are very sorry for the reason why you're here. So thank you for joining us. Look, as they say in the introduction there, not really any way to introduce this or to talk about it. So I think we need to dive straight in. Would you be so kind as to tell us sort of how you found yourself to be in the situation that you are now? Go back a few years or however long ago it is.
Yeah, will do. Thanks so much. And I agree with Gary Delaney as well. He's hilarious, and he's got a very famous wife as well in Sarah Millican.
Do you know,
well.
Luke, I never knew he was married to Sarah Millican. I had absolutely no idea. And just to lighten the tone for a second, one of my best mates is a guy called Danny Posthill, who you should look up. He's a brilliant impressionist. So he's on stage and he does a Sarah, he didn't know either. It's a live show. He does a Sarah Millican impression. The place bursts into applause. So he's like, okay, I thought it was quite a nice gag. And he walks out and like the stage manager said, do you know why the audience went wild? He went, no. And Gary Delaney walked up and said, that's my wife.
Brilliant. No, I recommend him. I follow him on Facebook. And he's got all his video clips from Mock the Week, Live at the Apollo. He's hilarious. He's definitely up there, one of my favourite comedians.
And there's a thing, Luke. I'm so glad. You know, humour gets through everything. There you are. We're going to dive into something horribly dark, but there we are. You and I immediately like bonding over Gary Delaney and humour and stuff. There's another one where he's up in Liverpool. It's a very small club. If you can find that clip, oh God, he was on fire that night. And he used to do corporate presentations. That was his background. So he uses, have you seen it when he uses like the slide, the slide presentation?
Now the Liverpool one, that's a very famous club in Liverpool run by, hosted by, I think his name is Paul Smith, and he's another hilarious Liverpudlian comedian as well.
Oh, it was great stuff. Great. Anyway, look, there we are. Welcome to Men's Radio Station. You see, humour is so blooming important.
I 100% agree with it, and I think without humour, I wouldn't have got over the last 15, 16 years. So, yeah, so thanks very much for having me on. So for my background, I lost my mum nearly 16 years ago from ovarian cancer. At the age of, she was just 54. She was also like my best friend as well. My mum and dad separated when I was 13. My brother and sister had moved out, so it was just me and my mum. You know, she was my best friend as well. We grew up together, really. You know, going through that teenage years for me personally. So I was 24 when she passed away. So, of course, it was devastating. But for me, I've always been an open book. I've always been able to talk about how I'm feeling and my highs and lows to anybody, and that's my loved ones, my family, my friends, and to the stranger in the street. I've never been a person who withholds information, my feelings. But I know a lot of people are like that as well. And again, when my mum passed away, my sister took over really of looking after me. You know, as an older sister, she was 10 years older than me. She sort of like took over mum. You know, I'd phone her up for advice, and unfortunately, nearly 6 years ago now, she passed away of breast cancer. So it's been a horrific time, and with that grief, of course, you never get over it, but you learn to live with it. Of course, I have upsetting moments now, you know.
But you know what, Luke, that's exactly the thing. And you know, when people say that you get over it eventually, you never get over it. What a ridiculous thing to say when people say that. I don't think anyone ever gets over the loss of a relative, no matter how close or frankly, when I say close, I mean immediate, or whether or not they're sort of say generations apart. For me, it's always been about my grandparents, because I still have my mother, I still have my sister, but I've certainly experienced the loss of my grandparents. And one of my grandmothers that I did lose to cancer. So, you know, it's absolutely a case of sort of knowing what it's like to see a relative. Well, I wouldn't say disintegrate with our particular case, actually, with my grandmother. It was 6 weeks from diagnosis to when we lost her. So it was actually quite quick.
Wow.
But the point is that, you know, I know that people who have disintegrated from it, and it's just, you even have that as the trauma as well. You know, when you see someone that you love disintegrate. Russ, I know that you know this as well. I know your mother might not have necessarily died of cancer, but I know that she obviously had a disease that meant that she, for want of a better term, disintegrated, and it is ghastly to watch. It's not, you know, it's almost like the added insult that the final outcome is that you lose them.
Yep. Anyway, Luke, you continue.
I totally agree that. No, and like I said, I've always been open with my journey, and with that, it comes with anxiety. I've been writing a book on and off the last 2 or 3 years, and I realised I've got a slight OCD as well, where you have to check the doors, lock the doors on the front door. On the occasion, I think, have I done that? Have I not?
That's not OCD. That's sensible.
Yeah.
If you're checking that you've locked the front door, that's actually a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, but not when you do about 4 or 5 times and then go halfway down the road.
No, that's OCD, mate. That's what you got. You got OCD. Just check it the once. That'll be fine.
But you're right. With you never really fully get over it. You learn to live with it, and it's like even when my happiest times, I've got a beautiful wife and 3 amazing sons as well, and I'm quite fortunate where I've got twin boys who have been in a Disney film, and it's the happiest, one of the proudest moments of being a dad ever. But there's
don't rush past that, Luke. Don't rush past that. We need full details on this show.
Okay.
Which Disney film? What were they doing?
It was Maleficent, Mistress of Evil with Angelina Jolie.
I've seen them both. I love those films. I've seen them both.
Well, the second film, right at the end of the film, you'll see a little boy flying with Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
That's one of my sons. Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
Get out.
Amazing.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Kidding me.
Brilliant. But again, it's like we didn't go to the world premiere, but we went to a premiere with a lot of the other cast members and the cast and crew and everything about it.
I tell you what, Luke, you dodged that bullet. You're lucky she didn't adopt him.
Yeah. Well, also
that could have been it.
Well, what other thing as well? She's lovely, Angelina. We met a few times, and the fact that she got to know my boys. I personally go on humanitarian trips to Kenya every year as well. So I go to the slums of Nakuru and we build classrooms in schools. So she got interested to hearing about them stories. My twin boys, they came out with me, and then the youngest children never go with the charity. It was beautiful. She's a lovely lady. Wow. And it was great. So just in the comments,
isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting? Here is someone, I've never met her, right? So you only get what the press or the one. There is somebody, and you're the only person I know who's ever met her, right? And you say, no, she was really lovely. Weird, isn't it?
She was. She actually she listened to my boys' conversations. She got on really well with them both, and then she actually straight away filmed another film in Britain called Come Away, and she actually got a part from the twins in that film with her as well. So,
oh boy, that's fantastic.
She bought the boys some items, signed a few things for them.
Stop it. This is what you call having friends in high places. Now you're just showing off.
I haven't got. I wish I had a mobile number. I haven't. So
look, I was only having coffee yesterday with Tom Cruise. I was walking the dog, and Tom said, "Do you mind if I join you?" And I said, "Tom, I really like some me time, mate. Leave it for today." And then he started to cry, and I said, "All right, join me." Let me just say this, Luke. First of all, what a fellow you are. And secondly, in case you think, well, I've just come onto a show and they won't know what I'm talking about. No, I try not to go down this avenue, but I will go down this avenue because they say, time is a great healer, which I say, bollocks. No, it isn't. You have summed it up beautifully, is that when you lose somebody, you learn to cope with it. Yeah. It doesn't go away. It doesn't get easier. You simply realize you have to get through life. You've got twin boys. I got twin boys. My wife died when the twins were 5. So you have a choice. You can lie down in the road and give up, or you can. I was very, very lucky. Somebody came into my life who's been magnificent, and I couldn't have done it without that person. But the point is, you learn to cope. And you find coping mechanisms. And at first, it's like having a splitting migraine. You think your head's going to burst. And then it goes to like a headache. And then it goes to just a dullness, maybe at the back of your head, which is kind of there always. But you get on with life and you do things. So it's very, very hard. But, you have a choice of how you approach it. And, you've got kids. And I think the kids propel you forwards. And you've done great things. I had no idea you did the charity in Kenya and everything like that. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I go every year. I think we didn't go last year for obvious reasons. That little COVID.
And what reason was that, Luke?
Called COVID. I'm not sure if anybody's heard about it. It's just a small.
No, you lost me. I don't know what that means.
But we've done for 6-7 years, and we do.
Why did you do that?
Well, my brother works for. My brother works for Derby County Football Club, the charity side of it. And he got approached by a charity called African Adventures, who says on the tin, really, they take communities, colleges, universities over to African countries. You go to this, the deprived environments, and you go and help out in the school. So you could either teach, or you could go and redevelop some of the classrooms, renovate them, or in fact build a whole school. And that's what we did for 4 years. We took a whole piece of land, built 12 classrooms, toilet block. So,
Phil, are you feeling inadequate?
I always feel inadequate on this.
I feel completely. I'm sitting here going,
no, but
this guy has all this shit happen to him. Then what does he do? Does he moan about it? No, he gets off his ass. He goes to Africa. He builds a school. I mean, wow. Come on.
Okay, so sorry, Luke, for some sort of novice who's not necessarily got involved with projects like that, but it was always thought to myself, I'd quite like to think about doing something like that. But how does one even begin to go about getting involved? I mean, do you approach the charities? Do you just say, no, I'm going to do this and off I go? How does it all sort of come together?
Well, like I said, African Adventures is the charity that we go with, and they've been going they've just celebrated their, I think, 12-year anniversary. It's an amazing organisation. They go to different kind of African countries like Zanzibar, Ghana, Kenya, where I go, and they just approach like colleges and universities. And what's really good about it is the fact that it makes you realise how lucky we are, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've got through for what I've gone through, because you go out to the deprived environments in these countries and go, these people haven't got anything. They've got no clean water. They've got no electricity. They've got hardly anything, but they're the happiest people ever. Genuinely, they are.
You see, that is our pursuit, which I stopped years ago, of material stuff. It's got to have this, got to have the new heart, you don't. You really don't. And it is amazing because you'd think, logically, with a Western hat on your head, logic would say these people be sitting in the mud going, this is like the worst life ever. And it's the opposite you're telling us.
No, absolutely not. And you get, so what's really good about it as well is that sometimes there's like little opportunities, like little things that come out of the blue. One year when we were out there, it was Kensington Independence Day, and we weren't allowed out the resort. We were staying out for the day, so we couldn't go to the project. So we said, well, what do we do? So we played football in the park next to us. And all of a sudden, we looked up on the top of the hill, and these Maasai warriors come down with like, all their jewelry and their spears. And they came down. We were just in awe. Like, wow.
Where's Stanley Baker when you need him?
They took off their jewelry, put down their spears, and they wanted a game of football. So obviously they couldn't speak Swahili. We couldn't speak English. And we ended up having a game of football against them, and it was the most
like the Premier League to me. They don't speak English. Go on.
It's just amazing because football was a communication. It was just absolutely incredible.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they rewrote Zulu? Yeah, I know Maasai warriors are not Zulus. I'm not that stupid. But if you redid it, the men of Harlech and all of that, and all they wanted to do was play football and start talking about Massey and stuff like that, and Harry Kane.
We also had brunch with the deputy president of Kenya as well. It was just.
So is there any other names you want to drop on this show? Seriously?
No. The reason why I'm saying that is it was also a little bit of a publicity stance from Kenya as well, because it was just after the bombings in Mombasa, which is horrendous. And they were trying to get us to stop from going to Kenya. And we thought, no, we're still going to go. So it was almost like a publicity stunt from the Kenyan people. But it was just amazing. Because the conversations we had was about Kenya in general, like the corruption side and the vast gap from the high earners to the people living in the slums. It was just fascinating. So yeah, I've been really lucky, and like I said,
I know we're going completely off topic. Luke, I know we're going completely off topic, but sod it. That is life. This is such an interesting thing. Here's the thing: you go out there and you're doing all this good stuff. Are they? I'm gonna try and phrase it as delicately as I can, the way I'm feeling this morning. Are they grateful and happy to see you, or do they think, oh God, here's another white guy telling us what to do?
No, and this is and you're absolutely right to bring that up, because I get that question asked quite a lot, because unfortunately with like the latest comic relief like last couple of years, I know that Stacey Dooley had some problems with posting on social media and being called a white saviour. We're not a white, for me personally, I'm not a white saviour. I'll go out there because I want to help somebody. I'm not a saviour. And
I don't understand the negative. I just don't understand it. It's just vicious, isn't it? It's whether you like Stacey Dooley or you can't bear her, but I mean, it's irrelevant.
Well, what I find really curious is that the people who actually sort of start pouring out this vitriol, what have they done? If you show me that they've done something better and more worthwhile, then maybe I'd say, okay, yeah, do you know what? You've got a point. Actually, what do we know?
Yeah, have you met Angelina Jolie? No, well then shut up.
But no, but
that's what I'm telling you.
It's just such an
people like that.
actually help
in the videos that I've put up, and you'll see that the hard work that goes in it. You know, I'm not a builder by trade, but for 2 weeks I really hard graft. So, you know, because I want to make a change. You know.
Oh, now when you went out there, Luke, and the Kenyans came over, although you're not a builder by trade, and this is an important question, did you go, cup of tea would be lovely, love, 7 sugars? Did you do that?
They do supply us with lunch though, which is amazing. Rice and beans, and it was just lovely. Honestly.
Oh wow!
In my language, I love rice and beans. I love that.
Well,
I'm into that.
It wasn't that half a stone in 2 weeks, so it's all good. You know, you put a little bit of weight on before you go, and you come back look a little bit. So it's all good.
But Luke,
so they're pleased to see you.
Actually going through the process of, say, when you're there, when you're physically there, being reminded you're submerged in this world where you're surrounded by people who don't have very much, but what's going through your mind then? Are you thinking to yourself, well, look, I've had my share of hardship as well. Okay, I'm not necessarily living in conditions like this, but obviously I've lost 2 very close relatives of mine, and that I'm not, you know, it's not like my life's any easier. Or does it actually make those feelings almost, as it were, not go away, but just sort of maybe not be as quite to the forefront as they otherwise would be?
Yeah, you cherish the moments when you're out there. And then one of the reasons why is because obviously in the slums of Kenya, where they don't have decent food, they don't have clean water, no electricity. You know, they're living expectations, so they only live really.
So the sanitary, Luke, just for a second, I'm not being gross, but the sanitary conditions, and please don't go into great details because I might want to eat later today. The sanitary conditions must be horrible. If you haven't got electricity, what have you got? Open sewers and stuff? Don't go into great detail.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. That's exactly what it is. And you know, we go on a couple of the home visits as well. So we go and visit some of the kids, you know, and these are like 6x6 rooms, and there's sometimes 7 or 8 members of the family living there.
Jesus.
And you know, we were quite fortunate when we went outside. We looked at the water, and it was like an old-fashioned well. And it took 3 minutes to take your bucket all the way up, down to the bottom of the water and bring it all up.
3 minutes?
Yeah.
Were you diving down to Australia or something? Wow.
It's huge. But again, it's and showing my boys that as well gave them perspective, because the year before was when they did all that filming, so they were treating like kings, really, like hotels. Going to the other extreme to Kenya, they're fascinating. And I tell you what was really good for them as well is that they did a whole school presentation when they got back to like 400 of their school friends. And I went and watched it, me and my wife did. And the best thing about it was at the end of it, there was about 50 school children with their hands up asking questions, which I found just fascinating, because at least, that, you know, it's just getting that message across that we're all so lucky.
It's a beautiful thing. And it resonates. Obviously, your kids are great. Like you, if I may say, they are great communicators. You're a great communicator. And whether you like it or not, sorry, you are. And they've inherited that. Or maybe your wife's an even better communicator. We don't know.
Look, I'm sorry if you already answered this, but out of it, how old did you say how old your sons are? Sorry,
they're 10 now. They're 8 at the time when they went out.
They're only 10.
The reason
they're
why
only 10, the little ones.
Okay, but the reason why I ask this is because then in that case they would have been very young when you lost your sister. They probably didn't know your mother. So they didn't know your mother then in that case. And I'm just wondering sort of how much are they aware of their relatives who aren't around? Because a lot of the time it's quite nice to sort of know that people keep memories alive, and that even though, because for me, I always feel like I've known my late grandfather. I never knew him personally, but for some reason, those who did know him, a lot of them say I'm very much like him, and I don't know.
God, was he that irritating? God damn!
Whether or not
your grandmother, poor woman.
I don't know whether or not that's nurture. They were divorced, thank you. I don't know if that's nurture.
Well,
that shut him up. I don't know if that
there you go. You've said it all.
I don't know whether or not that. Will you shush? I don't know whether or not that was nurture or whether or not it was just sheer coincidence, genetics, if you want to call it that. But sort of, do you see any traits of your sister and your mum in your boys, or is it just because you keep their memory alive, you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, we have a big giant photo, I've seen now, of my mum in the living room. So again, I always tell my boy to talk about my mum, to talk to my boys about my mum and how the person she is. And I do see traits of my mum in, especially one of my boys, of I don't know really. You can just recognise it without even pinpointing it.
Yeah.
And
Sure,
when my sister was quite poorly, my wife was at the time making cushions, and she made her a Smartie cushion.
A Smartie cushion.
Yeah, so it
like
was
the
a
sweets,
fabric of
like the
Smarties.
sweets.
Yeah.
So what
she's now done, she's actually made a cushion each for my boys, so they go to bed with that Smarties cushion. They adore her, and vice versa, and they've got my sister's mannerisms and laughter, and it's beautiful to see from that point of view. So yeah, it's great.
If speaking of losing one's sister, and forgive me for intruding, Luke, a good friend Tony Blackburn. Lost his sister. He had absolutely adored his sister Jackie. She passed away this week. So on behalf of Men's Radio Station and on behalf of Women's Radio Station, we pass on our condolences to Tony Blackburn, sending lots of love to his lovely wife Debbie, and to Tori, his daughter as well. I know they're very upset at losing Jackie, but that's life, isn't it? It takes us all. You're an amazing fellow, Luke Newman.
To be honest, I'm not
really
even,
are.
I've not even talked about what I do now. So for me, I now recognise that I've got a mental health illness. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I've got anxiety. I still suffer with slight depression from that grief. And I know it's really hard for us men really to be open with our mental health journey. So in 2019, I set up a group called For Men to Talk, which really is exactly says on the tin. Every single Wednesday we come together via Zoom now. Obviously, it was in a cafe before that little word COVID crept in. And so on every single Wednesday, we've been having meetings. There's about 20 of us that come on and talk about how we're feeling, like our highs and lows. We talk about random stuff. Well, we do talk about like football, TV, and comedy. What gets us in we all know that laughter is the best medicine. Totally. So we do have a bit of a giggle like that. And for me as well, because of my knowledge of obviously the fact that I lost my mum and sister to cancer. My dad had testicular cancer when he was 32. Still here.
Wow, that is young.
35 years later, he's absolutely fine. Touch wood. But us men need to know about these symptoms of looking out for testicular cancer and prostate cancer. So we get professionals in on the odd occasion, and we do get, from Prostate Cancer UK. We have to know that 1 in 8 men in our lifetime will have prostate cancer.
It killed my dad. You're preaching to the converted, Luke. I've got to tell you, it took my dad, and so it's very much. I don't know what's going to get me first, but whatever it is, so it's always very much up in mind. Very much in the forefront. You're absolutely right. This is a wonderful thing. So you have 20 people like once a week. You say once a month.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So yeah, and what's been really good about obviously when I was in a cafe in Bedfordshire where I live, we were getting about 24, 25 men locally from the area coming. What's been really good about Zoom is the fact that they can come from anywhere, and we've even got a regular now who comes from Miami over in the States. So he joined in.
Does he have his sleeves like rolled up slightly on his linen jacket?
It's exactly the same thing I said to him when he first joined.
One of the twins, right? Look, one of the twins suddenly this year said, I've got into a thing called Miami Vice. I said, what? Don Johnson, Miami Vice. He's 22, right? Obsessed with Miami Vice. Bought all the DVDs and Blu-ray. So random.
I dressed up in my dad's old suit that he got married in. So this is going to be late 70s. Yeah, it must be the 70s. But I got one of his suits for an 80s night. And put like a fluorescent line shirt on and rolled up the sleeves on both my jackets. It was brilliant.
You're talking about my wardrobe there. I wouldn't have to. That's not fancy dress for me. I just have my wardrobe. That's it. That's what I got there. You're an extraordinary guy. So, how are you dealing with the? Is there anything you don't do? For heaven's sake. Now, how are you dealing with the mental thing? You said you had OCD, but you've recognised it. But I mean, going to the front door 4 times is really, in the great scheme of things, is not a terrible.
It's better than it was.
It's okay. I had a cousin who lives in Australia, has done forever, called Morris, and he had terrible OCD before anybody knew what it was. And when I was a kid, this washing of the hands obsession, which now, of course, would be absolutely marvelous. It would be absolutely fantastic. But I have to say that his wash, it was like, Morris, what the hell are you doing? You just washed your hands. I've got to wash my hands again, Russell. So, all right, putting the OCD to one side, because that seems to be kind of manageable. Depression, anxiety. You said you got anxiety. Well, how does that feel? How does it manifest itself for you?
For me, it stops me from doing certain things. So, say I've organised. Now, this is obviously again pre-COVID. You know, sometimes I might organise a night out. Sometimes I'd stop myself from going. You know, there'll be that anxiety of, I'm not sure I really fancy it tonight. The anxiety creeps over where something could happen to make it go wrong. You know, and you get yourself in such a state that you just don't do it. And
explain that. Just
don't know what I was going to say. Just in case people don't necessarily know what anxiety feels like. I know that sounds like almost a daft question, because one would assume that anxious is actually sort of a natural emotion, but feeling anxious and I would suggest anxiety are probably two separate things. Obviously, they're very similar because they're related, but actually, I hate the word suffering, but experiencing anxiety is very different to being a bit anxious about. So I'm a bit funny. I'm anxious before we go live on the radio. It doesn't mean I can't do it. So what would you say is the difference? How does anxiety present itself?
For me, I get a tightness of chest and I get a really, really dry throat to the point of I feel like I need to just keep drinking because I feel like I've got a sore throat. And it's not a sore throat. That's that anxiety going through my throat. And it's being honest about it. You know, a lot of men especially won't be honest about their anxiety. And this is why I like to come on, you know, with you guys today and whenever I can talk about it, because I'm not ashamed of it. You know, it's just me. I've got feelings like any other person. And us men need to try and get over the fact that we are human as well. You know, we don't have to get the stiff upper lip and carry on, you know.
No, Andrea Lucas is saying, she gets it. Do you get palpitations?
Yeah, not as bad as I used to. Again, it's learning about coping mechanisms. You know, what's good to control this anxiety. So I had CBT therapy, cognitive behaviour therapy. I'd say about 6-7 years ago now. Best thing I've ever done. I've had 2 lots of counselling to talk about my grief and what I've been going through, which have been absolutely amazing. That went from the fabulous NHS and GP, and they were brilliant. But CBT therapy was absolutely amazing because I always thought that I needed to be perfect in every single thing I did. And it went to the stage where, because the things were going wrong in my life, you know, I was losing people, I was always waiting for something next to happen, you know, the next bad thing to happen. And because I was so happy, my wife almost came along overnight, and she fell pregnant with the twins after a couple of months we got together. It was planned, not twins, obviously, because we were so happy. She's the first woman really I felt so relaxed and knew that I'd spend the rest of my life with. But because it was happening, it was so amazing, things were going right, I was thinking, what something's going to go wrong? What if them twins aren't mine? And it got to that stage where I went, I need to go and sort myself out. And again, that's why I went to my GP, suggested CBT therapy, and honestly, the best thing we've ever done.
How long were you doing CBT for?
8 weeks.
That was it?
8 weeks, yeah. And I tell you what got me over the line with CBT therapy was a compassionate letter. So you write a letter to yourself saying it's okay not to, you know, be perfect.
See,
but, you know.
Hang on.
What I do is I write to Phil.
Yeah,
and I feel so much better. Phil, you're an arse.
To be fair, the letters he writes to me, the letters
after that.
The letters he writes to me are not readable on air. When you write to yourself, first and foremost, how did that feel the first time? Didn't it feel a bit strange or a bit? I'm going to be blunt, sorry, because this is what we do here. We are quite open and honest. Didn't it feel a bit stupid writing to yourself?
Do you know what? I've never written to myself before. Never done a day-to-day diary, nothing like that. It was the most therapeutic thing I've ever done, and it felt natural. It's the first time I've ever gone to a keyboard and didn't stop writing until right at the end. Never thought about it; just flowed naturally. It was amazing, absolutely amazing.
Here's the thing, and there's so much more I need to talk to you about, as does Phil. But we beat ourselves up terribly. It's a human trait to beat ourselves up. The COVID has made it about a gazillion times worse because we're on our own and we have got months not hours, not minutes, months and months to ruminate over all the crappy things that we've done, all the mistakes that we've made, all the stupid people we may have got involved with emotionally or in business, all the terrible decisions we've made. And I totally understand writing to yourself. And I sometimes, when it was bad, talk to myself and just say, wait a minute, hang on, stop beating the crap out of yourself, because you've done X, Y, and Z. And it's important to remind, because we can so easily focus on the negative, and we don't allow ourselves to focus on the decent things that we do. Now, I'm not comparing it to what you do, dragging off to Kenya, building a school. Yeah, wow. Okay, it doesn't get much bigger than that. And it's a beautiful thing to do. It's completely altruistic. You're not, benefiting from this apart from the emotional feeling you're benefiting from it. But it's so important to do this. Now, what I wanted to ask you is that with the COVID, you're able to do the Zoom with your group. And I think that's really good. And joking aside, putting all my silly linen suit gags aside, getting someone in from Miami would have been obviously impossible beforehand. Yeah. But I do feel that this anxiety, turn it to Mel Brooks, the anxiety is going to go through the roof. I don't mean for you, Luke, but I mean generally.
Yeah.
If I can just put some contextualization around that just for a second, is that Phil and I are very different in as much as Phil is raring to go the moment the gates are lifted and restrictions are up and we can get back to normal life. I'm like, I'm doing it bit by bit. I mean, invitations are already coming in. I'm going, if I feel like it. And if they're a good friend, they'll understand it. But I feel anxious about it. And I just wonder how you feel, wearing your semi-professional hat here, how the COVID and anxiety is going to exacerbate the whole situation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the anxiety is going to hit the roof, and I think mental health is going to be really to the forefront of a lot of people moving forward. I still think when the furlough scheme finishes in September, and we all know that there will be job losses from that as well. Hopefully some jobs will remain because of this scheme, which I do applaud the government for doing. But once it finishes in September, and the loss of jobs, a lot of mental health is going to come to the forefront for financial reasons, and also from a man's point of view, they feel like they may not be able to provide for their family as well as they have done for, these jobs that can be lost are jobs that you could have for years.
Luke, is that still the role of the man? It's such an interesting phrase, and I know that men.
Not. But I agree, it's generally not. But I think because of the way that a man has been brought up for generations and generations, it's always been that term of the man has to provide, has to put food on the table, roof underneath the head. When we both know, for me personally, I couldn't do it on my own. With my wife, without my wife, we couldn't afford the house we live on without 2 full-time wages, and that's really what every family is going through right now, and has been for a number of years. But I think because, say for instance, a man loses his job and a female keeps her job, and she has to be the main breadwinner for the time being. I think from a man's point of view, that could be a bit of a pride thing as well. The fact that, he wants to contribute financially, and at that point that he may not be able to. It's a pride thing. It really is. And it's hard.
It's we could dedicate 3 hours just to that one point, because, my dad was a real meat and potatoes guy. He would not allow my mother to work. She was totally capable, had all sorts of brilliant plans and notions. But absolutely not. He was the boss. He went to work. That was it. End of story. And there was no discussing it whatsoever. But we live in modern times. Everybody wants equality, which we do. And it's really interesting that men are still stuck. And I'm there myself.
Yeah.
Men are still stuck that if we lost our income or our position, it's not ego, it's you feel somehow less of a person. Whereas if your wife lost a job, you'd be upset for her, but you wouldn't see her or your partner or whatever, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, your other half, if they lost their job, you wouldn't see them as a lesser person. You'd feel sorry for them and be upset for them.
But that's actually really strange that you say that, because that's exactly what you've described there is the reason why I bang on all the time about what it means to me to be able to, Luke, one of the running things for me, one of the things that I really sort of grapple with is the notion of not being able to get onto the housing market. Okay, I'm a young professional who, like so many people my age, absolutely struggles, and whatever bunkum excuse that the government comes up with saying, oh no, we've got, and I don't blame this government, I actually blame previous governments, but I'll bore you with that another time. The point is that if you look at the general way that they're trying to tackle it, along the lines of these different schemes they have in place, they say, oh no, there's loads of help out there. Rubbish, right? Those schemes do not help everybody, and those who it doesn't help, the only way I can describe is it makes me feel like almost like a shrinking violet, like I am nothing. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier on about the people in Africa that you've worked with. When you see that they don't have materialistic goods, where they have nothing, there's not really anything to get upset about, because they potentially know that that is what life is for them. And I think that, so when you look at the country here, in this country, where we have such pressures on everybody to maintain a certain way of life, it just adds such insult to injury when you can't achieve them.
Well, Ken, I don't buy myself things very much here. I don't treat myself to like big fancy things because I don't feel like I need them. I need something that, because I keep seeing the things what I do in Kenya and realise how little they've got. I'm thinking, well, when I get home, do I really need that thing? Is it really going to help me on my day-to-day life? Of course, I have a mobile phone, I have a laptop, because that's what to do my work. It's not a luxury. That's something that I need on a day-to-day basis. But if it's something way out there, which I definitely don't need, I won't buy it. I generally don't buy it. I look at the most important things, and my most important thing is to pay the bills, to have a roof underneath my head, food on the table for my wife and kids. And if that's all I can spend my money on, I'm a happy, happy man.
And there is life in one sentence. That's the key to it. It's the key to it. What makes you happy, and it takes time to work it out. What makes you happy, and if the pandemic has taught us anything at all, it's just really reinforced how I've been feeling for a lot of years, where I basically got rid of nearly everything. Phil knows this, and you wouldn't, Luke. And I got rid of so much. I thought, it's just stuff.
Yeah,
I don't need it. Does it make me happy? Not really. And it just all went, and I completely decluttered.
I think words are powerful as well. And you say about writing. For me, because I've been writing the book, it may just be for me, to be honest. Once I finish it, if one
doesn't
person
matter.
Helps, it doesn't matter.
Luke, it doesn't matter.
What I mean by that is that if somebody reads it, say if it's my children read it, they'll know a little bit, maybe know a little bit more about me. We have a gentleman who comes on our meeting, and he doesn't mind talking about that story, but he's 84, and he's got the early signs of dementia, bless him. And he's got such an amazing story to tell of what he's been through, that I passed him over to another friend of mine who runs an organisation called the Tally Ho Project, which looks at stories from the past and how.
Called what? Say that again slowly, Luke. The what project?
The Tally Ho Project.
Right.
It's amazing. But he talks to men who have been through, and women who have been through a lot, maybe through war and how to educate children, really, and the people of the future. And
would you do me a favour, Luke? Yeah. Would you do me a favour? Would you put him in touch with us? Because that's something that I'd really like to discuss with him.
He'll be on. Honestly, and Dave, who runs it, he's an amazing man, and yeah, definitely I'll do that. But the reason why I passed it on to him, I wanted his story to be documented of what that man's been through before he passes, or before even that whole thing where he'll forget what he's done. And I don't want that to happen. I want his life to be known for future generations.
So important. Do you know, it's so important. My auntie Sylvia, we got her story. My uncle Alex got his story. My dad would never talk about any. God knows, maybe he was an assassin or something. I don't know. Worked for the Craze. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. East End boy, but he would know. It's so important to get these stories. It's essential. Because otherwise it just disappears. It's like dust. It's like morning mist, isn't it? It just goes, and you think, what did they do? And you go, I don't know. And you can't ask anybody because no one knows.
No, I'll definitely pass over the details for David Tally-Ho project, because what he's doing
get them in touch.
It's absolutely amazing.
Do you know what is stunning, though? Is that you turned stuff around with just 8 weeks of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's an incredibly short time.
It's not just therapy.
I'm still resonating with me. That's an amazingly short time.
It's not about therapy. It's actually doing something afterwards as well. So you realise that it's still a journey you take. There's things that I've learned from CBT therapy, what I still take daily with breathing techniques when I'm having an anxiety moment, not an attack, but at a moment. And it's recognising that, I've now started to meditate, which I'd never ever thought I'd do. But I've been only doing it for the last couple of weeks, every single day, and that makes a difference as well, the relaxation.
That's working for you?
Really much, yeah. I genuinely
trouble with me is that I sit there, my mind is like a firework display, and I'm sitting here, but I've really got to do this. I've got to write that. I've got to make that phone call. I've got to send that email, and I can't. And I've been doing that for 30 years, about 25, 30 years of transcendental meditation. I can do it, but it doesn't desperately help me.
But I tell you, if meditation doesn't work, it's recognising what does work for you. So that could be watching
cigars.
Cigars.
Well, that's exactly cigars are my meditation.
So go and watch Gary Delaney piece on YouTube. But if that makes you happy and improves your mental health, then that's great. It doesn't have to be meditation. It doesn't have to be an hour run in the park. If it gets your mind happy, if it gets you in a better mood, then watch a film. Go and watch The Goonies or Home Alone or something like that from your past. But do something that makes you happy to get you out that bad mood.
Absolutely right. Philip, how are we doing for time, young fellow, me lad?
Well, that's precisely why I'm a little distracted, because to be honest with you, we're on the cusp of lining up our next guest. So, Luke, you must forgive and forget. It's been, honestly, a real...
No, don't forget, just forgive.
But
don't forget us.
But we have to put you on the spot. Forgive me. Will you come back and join us again?
100% I will.
No, there's two things. Luke, before you disappear, and now Phil's going, I've just told you to hurry up. I don't care. Number one, we absolutely want you. We want you back.
Yeah.
Because there's so many questions we have for you, and you're an extraordinary chap. That's number one. Number two, if you think there is any way that Men's Radio Station can help your group, your Wednesday group, you'd be very welcome. I think you've got our emails now. You can got our producer's email, so he can contact us, or you can contact us direct, and that is what we'd like to do. We can expand that.
Thank you very much.
By the way, and there's another thing, Luke, that you might want to look at that I started before we co-founded, Howard and myself, Men's Radio Station. It's called the Espresso Bar.
Okay.
The Espresso Bar. It's on Facebook. It's a private group. It's got over 1,000 members. It's for guys. You got to be a guy, and B, you got to be 40 plus. Those are the only two rules. It's called the Espresso Bar. Please have a look at it. We'd love to have you along there. We really would. That would be fantastic.
I've never seen that group.
And for Mental Talk is on all the social media channels, and it's now a community interest company. And if I get funding, great. If not, my profit is seeing improvement in mental health in my men that come every week. So,
Luke Newman, you're an amazing person. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
We like him.
I'll say. Blimey.
We like him. Wow. That was great. There's so much. We could spend the next 2 hours. Seriously, I know we can't because we've got guests up the kazoo. But we could spend the next 2 hours. There was so much that came out about what makes you happy, dealing with anxiety, looking at OCD, doing stuff for others and expecting nothing in return.
I mean, I don't know what
whole notion of materialism.
All I know is that the fact that he was able to talk for that long with and still sound so inspirational despite everything that he's been through, it's absolutely unbelievable.
But you do have I just want to say this because again, this is another 3-hour conversation. We haven't got time. You do have a choice as to how you deal with these things. Bad things happen to all of us. I mean, really bad things, the worst. And It's up here how you want to spend the rest of your life. Do you let it define you? It's going to affect you. It's inevitable. It's like being shot. It's going to affect you. You can't help it. But does it define you? Do you learn coping mechanisms, and do you then somehow use it? And what I did, and Phil knows, and I've been very open about this, is I use my anger and my fury as energy. As energy. And that's why I do what I do. Because anger, as Public Image Limited, which was Johnny Rotten's old band, PIL, which went on from the Sex Pistols, anger is an energy, and that absolutely is my motto. It's true.
Now,
burn you up, or you turn it to good things.
Now, you are listening to The Daily Show here on Men's Radio Station with him, Russ Kane, and with me, Phil Dave. We're with you live until 2 o'clock this afternoon, broadcasting across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Deluxe Radio, Radio Waves, and of course, mensradiostation.com and the Men's Radio Station app. Whichever way you are listening, you are most welcome. If you would like to watch the show in Technicolor glory, you are most welcome to do so. As I say, we not only stream the program in terms of audio on our social media pages, we also broadcast as well. Now, I was just about to introduce Kate McKenzie, who was poised, who was waiting in the green room. She's now disappeared. So we'll get her back and we'll find out what's going on. But she's around. Oh my God, I cannot believe you just said that, which she's around. Anyway, Ramsey says quite rightly, he says that he's concerned who's checking on the collar. No collar this week, Ramsey.
What?
No collar, because you may recall last week because last week I made 2. So frankly, I didn't need to make another one.
Well, hasn't gone off?
No, it's in the freezy Anana. Anyway, right.
Do you realise there are, all these people waiting for the great trip to the kitchen? It's a Friday ritual.
And it is a Friday night.
And you've just trashed it.
Russell, and amongst our many discussions with the lovely Chantal Rickard's OB, do you ever recall that we spoke about a program a while back called The Undateables on Channel 4?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, our next guest may look a bit familiar to you, not because she's one of the Undateables, because she's actually the one who was the relationship coach on the series, or the dating coach, I think, on the Channel 4 series.
So the last guest hung out with Angelina Jolie.
I know.
This one's on TV. Can you just get somebody normal? Because I'm feeling a bit crap now.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm feeling more inadequate than ever today.
Because I arranged the guests.
Actually, never in a million years say that you are feeling inadequate when you've got a sex and relationship coach coming on the program. Anyway, joining us now on Men's Radio Station, The Daily Show, I'm delighted to say that we can have a very warm welcome to Kate McKenzie. Kate, a very good afternoon to you. And my goodness me, Kate, your hair is fantastic. Hello.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Russ.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
Very good. Lovely to be with you. I've loved the show already. I loved Luke. I loved all your chat. That was so inspiring. My God, my heart is full.
Isn't Luke amazing? Seriously.
Amazing.
We haven't met him before.
We had a banana today, so I'm not full. I'm just not full in the least. I'll be frank with you. Andrea Lucas, first question: what's sex? Andrea, Christ knows. It comes before 7 and after 5.
Anyway, Andy Lucas there.
Why we play that, Kate? In case you think we're just playing a random jingle.
Oh, what are you playing, Russ? What are you playing?
Phil plays it. Phil has the desk.
Phil, what are you playing?
Thank you, baked potato.
Yes, just in case you think there's a really random little clip there.
Because the listener's name, the viewer's name, is Andrea Lucas. I think the clue is in the surname, Lucas.
So Matt Lucas may have something to do with her. Anywho, Kate, thank you for. I'm going to be transparent. I said this at the top of the show. I'm going to say it to you right now.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable talking about intimacy. It's not something I do. It's not something that I don't mean it's not something I do. Oh God, this is going to go terrible. I can hear it now. Anyway,
the film The 40-Year-Old Virgin are doing another for the 34-year-old virgin.
No. I just bring my cards on the table. I don't like talking about this subject because I believe that it's something that is behind closed doors. It's no one else's business. Change my mind. Why am I wrong?
If you're dogging.
Shut up. Why am I? Now,
it's everybody's business.
I can only apologise to my learned friend. Anyway, right, would you please so kind as to tell me why I'm wrong?
I think that's absolutely fair enough, because the main component about good sensuality, sexuality, intimacy of any kind is safety. If you don't feel safe, it's not going to be a great experience. So it's very important that each person decides how that is, and you take it in the stages that are right for you.
Does holler play a part in any of this? Bring it all back to Phil.
Platinum bread.
This next half hour is all about Phil. We're going to get Phil sorted. This is it. This is my goal, Kate.
No, I am not the mission.
I'm going to get him sorted.
Excuse me, I am not the project today. Kate,
no, you are. No, you are. Kate, do you believe that every pot has a lid? Look at little Phil. Look at him. Look at that face. He's adorable. Come on, sort it out.
Phil's fantastic. I've already been listening to your show, and Phil can sing. If anyone can sing, they are an exquisite human being already. So it's up to Phil what Phil chooses. Sexuality is really about life force energy, isn't it? And if you're singing, that's a form of life force energy. What about if you're
quite a good drummer?
Oh my goodness, of course. You know the drummer always gets the girl, don't they?
Yeah, because you need someone to help slap the drum kit back to the car. That's why you get the girl.
Kate, how did you get into this particular line of work? Because I can't deny that even though I am well aware that sex therapy and relationship advice and stuff is nothing new, it still seems to me to be something that's quite niche. It's not every day that you stumble across somebody who is in your line of work. How did you fall into it, so to speak?
Very good point. So I was what you call a community artist. It meant I taught dance and drama with people who had long-term unemployment issues, homeless issues, mental health, disability, ex-offenders for many, many, many years, running projects and doing things to build people's confidence using arts. And then I ended up doing that in the mainstream. It turned out people in offices also were lacking confidence. And so I ran retreats and talks, building people's confidence to open up to what they wanted in their lives. And then after running some retreats in different countries, I really discovered that it wasn't enough to just look at what do you want in your life. People had real wounding about love. They had real wounding about their heart. And because they'd gone through perhaps breakups or divorce or disappointment or grief, like you were talking earlier, and it was too difficult. So people were finding it frightening to go towards opening up their heart or love or whatever you like. And I decided to become a therapist and study love and study intimacy and study relationships and why it feels so dangerous potentially for some people or so difficult to open up about, because I wanted to have more tools to help those who felt this is too much. I can't go there. And so that's what took me down that journey. And then it's gone further and further and further because I've realized, really there's a lot to learn about how to help people connect on all the different levels: communication, sensuality, sexuality, but every different stage, if you see what I'm saying.
I see what you're saying, but I have to confess that it blows my mind, seriously, because let's pick up on one or two things that you've said there, because one thing that I was quite intrigued by is the link between confidence and sexuality, I suppose, because when you talk about how you used to go into offices and people are trying to coach them and encourage them to be more confident as individuals, I'd imagine confidence plays a massive part. God, why does everything sound like a double entendre? I would imagine that...
It's all right, Kate used the word tool. We let that slide.
Stop it, you let that slide, indeed. I would imagine that confidence is quite key to when it comes to the line of work you do now. So actually sort of that probably geared you up towards sort of really being able to help people in the way that you help them.
Do you mean because I'd done the running workshops before to build up?
Exactly. Well, I was going to say, because it sort of goes hand in hand, if you will. If one is not confident about themselves, whether that be in sexuality, whether that be as a human, in terms of sort of how they look, maybe in appearance, then I would imagine that does wreak havoc with the ultimate product. So
the reason I'm laughing, Kate, I'm so sorry. The reason I'm laughing is because what you've said. Sometimes, if I'm visiting my very close friend, and there'll be some issue, I say, you know what? There's only one thing that's going to solve this, and she goes, "What?" I go, "Interpretive dance," and I leap up off the settee and do the most ridiculous interpretive. She goes, "Oh Christ!" And of course, I can't dance at all, so I'm just laughing at myself being such an idiot.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Humor, laughing, singing, starting to bring things back to playfulness is the key, because of course sex, just the word can sound so serious, can't it? And it can sound exactly like I've got to be the most confident, the most brilliant performer. And as soon as we get it lighter again and we bring it back to little mini moments of laughing, and exactly that, I sometimes teach couples how to dance and strip for each other, not naked, but to play, to flirt. Because what happens is you sometimes get together with people and it's fine, and after a while you start to know them and it gets terribly serious, and people don't know how do they go back to flirting again?
Boring as well.
Right. How do you make it funny, silly, flirting? How do you make it less so serious, so you don't have to think I have to be so confident, I have to be so brilliant to deliver a great performance in one's mind? Does that make any sense? So it is. Yeah. How do you bring that interpretive dance or singing or laughing back?
Well, what's curious, frankly, I should imagine the sort of the state of Russ's interpretive dance, anyone would laugh. But
precisely, that's the whole point. It's completely hopeless. Of course it is. It's stupid.
I suggest though, that one thing that I've never really sort of thought of is that there is pressure on both sides. You know, whichever type of relationship someone is in, whether it's heterosexual, homosexual, whatever it may be, there is pressure on both people involved in the act, as it were, to get it right. But they probably don't think like that, because they're probably thinking so much, oh, I hope it's not on me, it mustn't be on me, what can I do to improve it? They're so sort of conscious of themselves and what the other person might think of them, that they don't necessarily think that the other person might be thinking exactly the same way.
Yeah, you're naming such important things, Phil. You're such important things, and the idea actually of potentially looking at this as a journey is that, yes, initially, many of us are thinking, "Oh my goodness, what am I doing for the other?" And it's very hard to stay with your own experience if you're busy worrying, "Am I going to be good enough for the other?" Or sometimes people are worrying, "Is that person good enough for what other people think of us?" You know, there's all different configurations. And the idea with getting to know yourself sexually, getting to know your sexual values or your sensual values, or even your menus, what you like, is that a bit like any experience in life, once you get to know you and enjoy you, your own pleasure, your own perhaps pleasure practices, then you can also have something called synchrony sex, which is it can become a dance where you have an idea what you like, and you might be open to what might the other person like, but take it more like a dance. Even if the dance goes wrong, have some fun.
Now I've got visions of Philip Schofield and Holly Doodad standing there judging you. Christ, put me right off. It's put me right off now.
Aww.
Now, questions for you, Kate.
Yes.
Ed Grossman. Kate, hello. What issues do you help to fix? Is it general confidence or actual activity? That was very delicately put, Edward.
Beautiful. So sex therapy, traditionally, there's different parts to it. One is a CBT part where there's behavioral things to do, so things to go home, and if it was a couple, you'd get them to do exercises, or if it's a man with erectile issues, you'd get him to engage in exercises, or a woman who's having difficulties as well with vaginismus or different
with what?
issues.
Sorry, with what?
Whoa! Hang on, just a couple.
Hang on a minute.
What? You can't tell us that. We don't understand these terminologies.
I don't know what I mean.
So she might have involuntary contraction of her vagina, which means it's difficult to contain a penis.
Good God. Blimey. Wow. Okay.
Thank God you're not making your holiday this week.
Every day is the school day. I'm so sorry. I just knew as soon as we had your expertise on the show, I thought we'd do anyway. Kate, I assume one would hope that you'd take this in the humour it's meant.
God,
oh yeah, no, laughing is
this is complicated stuff.
But in all seriousness, Kate, I actually wonder whether or not that this is in some way a normal reaction when you speak to people for the first time, because not because they're laughing at you. It's
laughing at you. We love you. You're great.
I'll be honest, it's making me nervous. It's making me uncomfortable. And I don't know why, because it's natural. It's not everyone does, for crying out loud, but I don't know why.
It depends, Phil, how you grew up. So we have something called legacy burdens or legacy riches, which is what were the information in the systems around you or the family around you or what you grew up with. And was your sexuality accepted in the family or the systems you grew up around? So some people may feel ashamed or be squashing themselves in some ways. And so there can be really different parts to this to look at and investigate. And so often, I just did a podcast with Denise Van Outen and Eddie Boxall all about couple counselling. It's on.
Who's the other one? I know we know Denise, but
how's her
shoulder? How's her shoulder, by the way?
I think it's mending. I think she's on the mend.
That wasn't funny, was it? That was
no.
This was the podcast series Getting to I Do, yeah?
That's right. Thank you so much. And what happened was when they had 6 different couple counselling sessions, but when they had mine, their first question was, do we have to take all our clothes off? Which they absolutely did not. But it's that mention of sex that people think, Mrs. What's going to happen here? And people get a little bit frightened and then they laugh. But laughter's great. But you then need to reassure people, no, you don't have to take any clothes off. And Phil, you don't have to reveal anything. It's to begin the journey. Yeah.
Don't worry, I won't reveal anything.
Complicated.
I'm going to say, but Russ, I was just thinking, right, that when you talk about this to somebody and they give this kind of reaction, it's daft if you think about it, because how else are we here? How else are we having this conversation? Unless it's in the unlikely event that someone was thrown in a test tube, which I doubt it somehow.
I don't doubt it with me. I think that's exactly how I turned it.
But I'm being serious. How else are we all here? It's something. It's almost one of the only certainties in life is that to exist, a couple had to have made you somehow. If you think about, people say that there are only certainties in life is death and taxes. Well, certainty is that you would have had to have been somehow sexually created. And yet so many people I know wouldn't dream of talking about this so openly. They're just twitchy about it. I don't feel like I'm myself during this interview. I'm not going to lie. I'm actually very on edge, and I don't.
Why are you on it? The thing is, Kate, like Phil's younger than two of my kids, right? Which I always forget, and I have to remind myself every now.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? I've got to the age I have, and I've never kind of thought it was that complicated. I've always just had a bloody good time. To be perfectly blunt with you, and that's it. I'm really happy. I've just had a damn good time.
Okay, but this is my point.
A very good time. But
hang on a second. Having a good time, perfect. We've all been there, all done. That's not what I'm guessing at here. What I'm guessing at is that we are on live radio having a conversation about intimacy, which I would not normally think of doing. I wouldn't normally think of having a conversation about said topic.
Hang on a minute. Kate, forgive me for 1 sec. Because this is important, right? Okay. We discuss on this show, since we started the radio station in January 2019, death, cancer, suicide, depression, anxiety, huge issues, right? The guests that we've had in, Phil and I mean, I'm just filling you in here, if I can say that, Kate, with guests who have survived suicide, whose brothers or sisters have, have ended their lives in the most tragic. We've dealt with really terrible things. This should be a great thing, right? This isn't death. This is the opposite of death. This should be just life affirming and fun and great. Right.
And
yet you're terrific in the studio, Phil, discussing really, stuff which breaks your heart, and you're uncomfortable with this.
And I think I know why that is. If I may, Kate, sorry, I'm not taking up your time, but I think I know what that is. The reason why I can handle some of the more serious subjects, such as loss of loved ones, such as cancer and all of these sorts of conditions that we cover, is because I feel as though I've had enough life lessons to tell me I should react to that.
Yeah, good point.
I haven't had, as far as I'm aware or concerned, any life lesson in the way, the art of talking about intimacy.
Very good point.
Something that goes on behind closed doors, and that's all I know.
Very good point. Very good point. And it's really nice that you're able to say that, I have to say, because that, not that you have to say anymore, but that starts the journey. If people can't say how afraid they are or how angry they are, I can work with people because of that. You may have heard something called incels. I don't know if you heard the idea of incels. And there's some people who are very angry because they feel like they haven't had a chance to even engage sexually, and they feel like they've missed out on certain experiences. And there is something about really naming that it's not easy. That's the starting point. So I want to say thank you for naming that, because I think it's not easy for lots of
INCELS.
Incels. INCEL. Yeah.
Oh, incels. Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about the computer company.
I know, but I kept seeing that word cropping up, and I have absolutely zero idea what the hell it meant.
I think it's people who feel like they've missed out and they aren't having opportunities and they haven't been able to have sexual relationships, and they're missing out and they're angry about it for lots of different reasons. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of people, because what happens sometimes is that people feel, because they can't talk about it, they've got to start to pretend. So some people feel like there's a pressure to start to pretend. And actually, the truth is, just as, I don't know if Russ, you would agree with this, but the potential is life given a chance. There may be experiences, if we don't freeze off from them, and we can actually get to learn about this and learn and go on a journey. But for some people, that gets too scary. And so they can back away from those learning experiences. And so it's, how do we bring that to the forefront to encourage people to go gently and name the fears? And it's so exciting when people are vulnerable enough to say, I'm so nervous because I find you so attractive. It's very charming, but people think, I can't say that. I can't say that.
That's the first mistake. First mistake back in the day, right? And this was always true. There was always, and you sometimes say, you would see a beautiful girl and they're on their own. And the reason they're on their own, because everybody else in the room is too scared to go up and say, hello.
That's right.
Can I get you a cupcake or, whatever, right? Slice of Phil's holler. But they all assume that this fabulous, and the girls, often why won't people talk to me?
That's
right. Because they're too scared.
That's right. Everybody assumes things about.
Yeah, you make these huge assumptions, and when you, as that wonderful thing from The Odd Couple, I assume, well, you make an arse out of you and me. I always love that phrase.
That's right. That's right. And this is the thing. Kansas University discovered that most people cannot read flirting signals. So what happens is, unless we make it more plain that we are interested, it's not going to be read, and then we may miss out on all kinds of situations if we're not ready and in the department for opening those doors, if you see what I mean.
Now, you see, Kate, the reason why I smile at the notion of that is because I wonder whether or not that, so when they say people can't read flirting signals, or whether or not that they are flirted, if someone flirts with them who they really don't want to flirt with them, I'd imagine that's a very different thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is where it's an art, flirting, which I teach a lot of classes, and I teach lots of people how to do this, because it's a skill. You need to know, do you want to be friendly flirting? Are you just being in service, like saying hello to the person in the supermarket? Are you wanting to emit that actually I'm attracted to you? They're all different types of flirting. And what happens is some people get over-engaged with people they're not attracted to and don't know how to leave. Some people friend zone people that they actually really like, and it becomes a complete muddle. So people, it's a bit like learning to drive. There are real skills about how to learn what you're giving off.
It's all about clutch control.
Exactly.
Clutch control and not stalling.
Yes.
That's where you're at.
That's right. That's right.
And check your mirrors.
And also recognize, are you more of a turtle or are you more of an octopus?
Excuse me?
So some people are more...
We're loving you, by the way. You're great. I have no idea what you're saying half the time, but it's fabulous. I'm loving it. Your dad was right. Get her on the show. Your dad was right. Your dad's like your biggest fan in the world.
Well, I'm very grateful to him. Yeah, thank you.
He set all this up.
Oh, well, thank you to him. And thank you
know that. Did you not know that's why you're here?
I did know that. I did know that. Yes, he's brilliant.
I don't know. I don't know your dad, but he kept reaching out, and I said, "Okay, fine." You know, he said, "Oh, you got to get my daughter on."
I know what. Yes, I know. It's all to do with Led Zeppelin, isn't it? Because you liked his.
It's to do with Led Zeppelin. It's a long story. It's all to do with Led Zeppelin.
Exactly.
Who I adored.
Exactly. So, basically, if you're an octopus, you're more of a pursuer. So you're the go-getting type. Right. Some of those pursuing types may be good at pursuing, but they still might get no leads, and it's because they're doing it too strongly. So they need to learn how to relax a bit more, clutch control. But some people are turtles. They're holding back. They're staying back. They're a bit too scared of getting it wrong, so they don't make the move. Yeah. Those people I like to try and encourage them to come forward. So it's learning which side of the coin you're more on and helping you to adjust your gear sticks. Exactly. It's all gear sticks.
What would Freud make of that? Now, here's the thing. You can work that one out in your own time. We've got so many comments. I am not reading them out because I will never keep a straight face. And you're being very, very naughty. Sen Monroe, I'm going to speak to you after the show and you're heading for a slap. Telling you now. Ed Grossman, you're killing me here. And Martin Bell, who is in the therapeutic community over in Mallorca, and many famous models and actresses find men are nervous to approach. Of course they are.
Right. That's right.
Of course they are.
Right. That's right.
And it's only natural because you think you're going to be told to sod off or whatever. But Kate, some of this boils down to, I guess, just my philosophy. Oh, I've got to the age that I have somehow. Is this? It's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? What's the worst can happen? And my dad always said, well, if I got into a state as a kid, he goes, all right, what's the worst that's going to happen? I don't know. They're going to do that. He said, are they going to take you out in the street and shoot you? This is what he said to me. It's the only philosophy he had. And I said, well, of course they're not going to take me out in the street and they're going to shoot me. He says, well, there you go. So what is the worst that's going to happen?
That's so you're probably a very good guide to encourage, Russ, especially sitting where you're sitting and experiencing what you've experienced. And we need that. We need other people who can say, have a go. And because, like Phil said, often people aren't discussing it, then people are not necessarily discussing it with other people who say, go on, have a go. What's the worst can happen? And we need to all hear this, because otherwise people are left to what they see in erotic novels or porn, where they're only, for example, in the case of men, only seeing images of men with the hardest penises and showing the biggest prowess. And where do you fit if you feel
in the films? It would be pretty hopeless if you were watching a porn film. The guy said, "I'm just going to make some challah now. Can you pop down to the kitchen?" And you've got 20 minutes of baking. And that wouldn't be great.
Absolutely, but then it puts pressure on.
Novel, but it wouldn't be great.
Yeah, it can put a lot of pressure on people. That's what I mean.
I apologize in advance if this is a daft question, but does intimacy have to be this complicated? Isn't it just a case of someone finds someone attractive, the other person that they find attractive finds them attractive, they have a bit of a thing, they get happy or what have you wanted, whatever euphemism you want to use, and as a result of it, then that's it, job done. Does it have to be as complicated as it sounds?
So the thing about it is that it all depends on the configuration of the people. Some people are marvelous at having a hookup and saying, what do you like? Do you like this kind of kissing, that kind of kissing? Do you like oral sex? What do you like around touch? What do you like? And even some people are quite good at negotiating all the way through, and they're quite happy to talk through that and be equals. Many of us are quite happy when we first meet people, because you get what's called eros energy, or a download of a lot of attraction hormones for about 6 months.
That. Eros energy.
Life force energy. You get all these hormones. And great. So people can have sexual, sensual interaction in a committed relationship, often without worrying about it for quite some time, until they hit difficulties in the relationship when they have to negotiate things. And then sometimes sex gets affected. Sometimes it doesn't. But if you are feeling like it's not as simple as you're saying, Phil, then it's worth going on a journey. It's worth exploring. What are your needs? What are your wants? What are your values? What do you want? How do you want to relate? What kind of relationships you want? What's your orientation? How do you want to be? It's worth the exploration.
Here's a few questions for you.
Well, I was going to say, if I may, I mean, here is which might, I think, give some indication as to why I behave the way I behave. Now, I don't believe in labeling. As far as I'm concerned, I think the fact we live in a day and age now where people need to declare themselves as one label or another makes me sick. It's really stupid. It's just not necessary. But I have often said to those who know me, this is no shock. People aren't going to be surprised who do know me well enough, that I have no appetite whatsoever for intimacy. Now, I know some people label that typically as asexuality. Asexual is what they nickname it. I don't know why I think like it. When everyone else around me is sort of saying, like, oh, I'm still single, I've got to get that sorted. It's not even the way I think. There is no part of me that thinks, my God, what am I going to do? I must sort this out now, straight away. Curiously enough, I do sort of think that there is a major discussion to be had, how people who do think like this could potentially sort of one day look at the notion of family life, because I believe that just because one thinks like that doesn't mean they don't want family of their own.
Yeah.
But it's something that I don't talk about very often because, frankly, it's no one's business. That's the main reason. But when I do talk about it, I am quite transparent about it, because people have understandably jumped to one conclusion or another, including very close family, by the way. I've also said, I don't see any sign of a girlfriend. In that case, he must be.
Yeah.
It's not that at all.
Cravat.
Yeah.
I don't think people, they just go, he wears a cravat. What's all that?
Yeah. No, I really love that. I really love that, Phil. I really love that, because what you're naming, and there's so many pieces to this, isn't there, is not one size fits all. And in fact,
you're like the Benny Hill of this is ridiculous. Can't say that. I'm getting in before all the listeners all over the world start pounding in. I don't know what they're going to do. Right. I want to ask you a question.
I am trying to take this conversation seriously. So, okay.
No, I really appreciate both of you, and it's fantastic the bounciness between you. Sorry if that's not the right word.
No, it is the right word.
But yeah, absolutely. People can be asexual. And it doesn't mean, sometimes, you probably know this, but it might be that someone wants to be romantic but not sexual. Some people who are asexual want to have intercourse, but for closeness, not because they actually want intercourse. There's all different, they might want a family. There are so many different choices in sexuality, and it's really a huge area, just as each person is huge.
Here's a big question for you. It's the one that I am fairly sure there's probably not enough time to answer. Are there too many choices now? Because think back to a time when we were told very clearly, boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, or girl falls in love with boy. They have a family. That's it. That was pretty much the only choice there was. Now, in an age where I feel it's probably the more sensible age to live in which, we are free to choose what we want to be. But I don't know whether or not psychologically, for the average person, it's the best age to live in, because actually it's information overload. Is there too much choice now when it comes to sexuality?
Very, very, very well put. One, people were always making these choices, but as you know, Oscar Wilde was sent to prison. As you know, if you look at gay rights, I mean, it was not long ago, it was considered a mental health issue to be gay, not long ago, and you were put in prison. There's been death sentences still in some countries in the world, and when we're not over what's happened to people around sexuality. in Saudi Arabia, you could still be stoned. So it's not over. I agree with you about information overload. I think it takes us into our heads. One of the problems with worrying about sexuality or intimacy is people worrying about in their head rather than thinking, what do I want? That's from their body, from their heart, from their genuine, authentic self, rather than thinking I should be this or I should be that. What do I want? And I think you're right. There's so much. But what I'm so grateful for is that people were making these choices. They were always single parents. There was always gay relationships. There was always people who probably would have liked to have been trans, but maybe didn't have the choice. But now it's more conscious. So there's some real positives and they're coming more. But I agree with you. Also, the other side of the coin is maybe I've met with young women who, when they were having sex, they were just worried about what they looked like because they'd been watching so much porn. The whole thing was what you look like. They hadn't even connected. What do I feel like? So I think it's both and. It's how do we come back to being present and how do we learn how to be really real, each person be real. So we've got this. Look at this show. Look at how you're talking. But yes, I
help
agree.
us out, Kate. Right. And we live in a very peculiar time. It's a very complicated time. And I think history will not judge it very kindly, is my view, for a whole raft of reasons. It feels very unstable. What is you see, because and I'm not talking about women's liberation, which was always correct. I'm not talking about equality, which is always correct. There is absolutely, I've never understood pay women less than guys. Complete madness. You're doing the same damn job. It's ridiculous, right? I've always believed that. But what is the guy supposed to do? You know, we feel so constrained. If you look at somebody the wrong way, if you say the wrong words now, I mean, and that interview has just thrown deliberate gasoline on an already raging inferno, which is why it's so sodding unhelpful. So, you know, guys are like, wow, what the hell? Now I'm not in that situation, all right? Because I have another half. But you know, what are guys supposed to do? I'll tell you how bad. Let me put some context around that. Before COVID, when I was always on public transport, going into meetings and stuff, I would not make eye contact with anybody on the tube train. Anybody, because God forbid, I didn't like the way he looked at me. He looked at me in a creepy, you know, and you just might be looking up and you might be thinking about something else. So I actually would either read a book or shut my eyes and listen to my audiobooks, which I'm always listening. What are guys supposed to do?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good point. Very good point. I think, you know, obviously I work with people. I work with men and women, hopefully, and couples, hopefully to build confidence. And I think internally and externally, people can freeze around situations. And I think it's confusing how to respond to situations. And I think you're right. Many men are really quite scared now. How are they meant to respond? How are they meant to manage? And I think it's so good to discuss this. So good to discuss what's the right situation, where, how, because times are completely changing. And you're absolutely right. It's been a lot of men feel intimidated now. So
it's not intimidated. It's a question of, I really don't need this shit coming into my life. I don't need a court case over absolutely nothing. I don't need my reputation, which is very important, besmirched by complete lunacy. That's what it's about. It's not intimidating. It's like, I'd rather not even just get involved in it. So, I mean, it's about reading signals. If you know, within 10 seconds, if you're tuned in. All right, I'm going to be serious for a second. Back in the day, you know, within 10 seconds of meeting somebody, literally 10, if there's going to be anything going on or not, you know, you just know. It's just how it is, right? But you know, so you got to read signals. But you think, wait a minute, am I going to be accused of stalking? Am I going to be accused of, because you had what we'd had for many years, for centuries, or certainly decades, and now you got situations. But the last time I was in LA, which is like my second home. The last time I was there was a court case. It was told to me because a male guy came in to talk to a female colleague in the office and did what I've done a million times, sat on the corner of her desk to have the conversation. There was only one chair in it's like an office area. There was one chair. She sued. She sued him for sitting on her desk, for invasion of privacy and all the other wonderful things they dream up in California. That's where it's got to.
Yeah.
So guys it's not we're intimidated, we're totally gun shy from this. Who the hell is in their lives?
Yeah.
No one.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Which is why, in a way, it's so important for us to learn how to, one, slow down, read signals, attune, get present. I mean, and I'm not saying that there isn't a legalese culture in America and possibly coming here too.
Well, it's here.
Yeah, but be aware. We have to be aware nowadays, don't we? We have to be aware. And we have to be aware that some people may not feel they can say no. So they may choose to go down another route, like a legalese route. So it's being aware.
Explain that.
You've just told me that he did something that she didn't like, but obviously at some level she didn't say no. Could you get off the desk? She took him to court.
But he wasn't being, in all seriousness, because the people knew him. He wasn't being flirtatious. He wasn't being eerie. He literally was talking about a business thing, and he just sat on the edge of the desk. There was no sexual connotation to it. It was like there's only one chair in the blooming room. So quite a long conversation. I'm going to perch myself on the edge of the desk. He wasn't laying over the desk, like a Mel Brooks movie.
No,
he was just perched there, and she sued and won.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's madness. But every company in America and most individuals have what they call a $40,000 slush fund. And literally, it's $40,000. That's the please just piss off and go away fee. That's the truth of it. That's living in LA now. You got to have a $40,000 go away fund stashed away to get rid of these problems. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
And, when America sneezes, we catch a cold over here.
Wow.
We don't want that culture. That culture.
No.
Culture is not right, but you've got to find a balance between that and the appalling case of this poor girl who's been murdered, allegedly. I don't know what the hell's going on with social media at the moment. Allegedly.
Yeah, can I just say we will not name.
No, absolutely not. I cannot believe this has been permitted. It's extraordinary. What's happened to the rule of law in this country? But where once again the focus is on men. We're all everyone gets a little labeled with the same thing. That is completely unacceptable. It's absolutely terrible. And every woman I know, without exception, has been followed, has been flashed at, has been touched up on the tube, has been intimidated in the office. Without fail, I have never met a woman who has not had these problems, and they are unacceptable. I know, I joke and I muck around and I laugh because that's how I like to go through life. But those things are completely unacceptable. So as a guy, you find yourself suddenly, you don't want to be with that group, but you don't want to be on the extreme where you can't sit to somebody and literally have a business conversation and then find out you're in a lawsuit. It's difficult.
It is difficult. It is difficult. And the thing about it, actually, they've done studies, and women are violent to men to the same level. This is worldwide studies that men are violent to women. The difference is in the physical build. So there's more damage done to women, which is why we need and have to. There has to be so much support because the physical damage is different. It's to do with the physicality.
Whichever way you want to dice it and slice it, men biologically, usually, unless you're Ronda Rousey, are physically strong. She's an MMA artist. Are physically stronger. But we've had guests on the show, Kate, men who had the crap beaten out of them by their
definitely. It's equal. It's just the size that makes the difference in the impact that happens. The thing about all of this stuff, which I think you're talking about, is that we're in a journey in life, and it's not easy, is it? It's like dialectical psychology, like dialectical materialism. You get things crashing up.
Well, you've lost me. What does that mean?
And you get two
your phrases because we're learning so much, but I don't know what they mean.
So we're in big changes.
Yeah.
We're in big changes, looking at race, I loved what Phil brought in about asexuality. You know, it's very important to bring in, not everybody wants sex, not everybody wants, you know, and these are really important times and really important things. And it's really been important that men find ways that they can approach people if they're heterosexual men and they want to approach women, or gay men and want to approach other men. However it is, it's important that people feel they can. And how do we do it? How do people do it so that it has got consent? And what we're talking about in a way is consent.
Now when you've mentioned that, here's a question from Ed Grossman, who's a very, very clever fellow and highly accomplished in his field. And it's this: Kate, I think you need to comment on having to obtain an explicit okay before sex.
Very good point. And from an Australian court case, the okay is ongoing. There was a court case in Australia which took about 5 years, where a girl was raped by a guy in a nightclub, and she's on camera saying yes, but she was a bit spun out. You know, she came in the door, he raped her, it's on camera, and they made a court ruling that actually she disassociated, she'd frozen, she didn't know how to say no. She ended up doing something. So there's something about checking in with people. So if somebody says no at any point, that needs to be honored. So that somebody might say yes, and then they might say no. Any of us might say no at any point.
We've moved on, I hope. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be graphic here, but this is true. We've moved on. Oh, but we went out for dinner, and then she said, come back for coffee. And then she said, we go to the bedroom.
Yeah.
And what was I supposed to do? Well, no means no.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're going to go home and go, well, that was a terrible evening and what a waste of bloody time. That's your problem. Get over it. You know?
Yeah.
Means no. And there's no wiggle room around that. That is, I totally agree with that.
And there's a wonderful journey. And I think this is what also Phil was talking about, is about our own consent. What do you want to consent to? What do you want or not want? Each of us really working that stuff out. And so we can have dialogues with someone, you know, so it might be, you know, I really feel drawn to you. Would you mind me talking with you? Would that be okay?
But also I wonder whether or not sort of part and parcel of the problem is that we don't like to, there is some sort of shame that comes with admitting to another individual that what you are about to try with them is something that you're trying for the first time.
Yes.
From anything, from anywhere, whichever which way. Yes. And it could be at any age. It's extraordinary that at any age that is almost shameful. When you need to admit to somebody, you wouldn't admit.
It's so interesting you use the word shameful.
You what? Sorry?
It's so interesting. I've never heard you talk like this, and I've known you for forever.
Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting that you're using the word shameful. You know, my view was, hey, let's give this a go. Well, we're
no, listen,
and you know, I'm not going to go, oh God, go into a whole, you know, psychobabble thing about it.
No, I agree completely that ordinarily there shouldn't be any shame involved at all.
No.
But what I'm trying to get at is it's curious how some people who they are trying something for the first time would be worried that it was sort of shameful to admit, actually, do you know what, I've never done this particular, what we're about to do before. And I think that that's a major flaw in society, in our ability to be comfortable with sexuality.
I think that's beautiful, because I think looking at sexual shame, so how did your caregivers grow up? How was shame talked about? How has sex been around you? What have you noticed in society? Are you carrying shame? And if you, and I agree with you, Phil. I mean, I also love what you're saying, Russ, because you're talking about being more confident. But I agree with you, Phil. I think for many people, it's really scary to say, do you know, I feel completely nervous saying this, but I really like you and I'd like to get to know you. You know, and this is excruciating for me to say this. That's charming, but that's hard for many people to say that, because they think, oh my God, they'll think what will they think of me? And or if I'm not experienced enough, or if I haven't got enough experience, will they want me? And it's, you know, it's such a shame that that's there, but that has to be talked about, that shame.
So I can't speak on behalf of you know, the kids. The twins are 22. God knows. I'm trying to say. I think one is horribly like me and the other's not. But putting that to aside, so I've at a certain age, and therefore I have a slightly different viewpoint, and the women and the girls that I grew up with, they have a slightly different viewpoint, and from their viewpoint, they like a confident guy. Not I'm going to say cocky, but I can't stand by for Ed Grossman and Sam Monroe making ridiculous comments. I can't. But you know what I mean? I don't mean like bravado, but a confident guy. And that's what that was then. It's different. I'm not speaking on behalf of people who are like 40 and younger, or 45 and younger. It's not my world.
I'm really sorry to do this because this is a fascinating conversation, truly it is, and actually I've surprisingly enjoyed this more than I may make out I have. But even so, I'm thinking whether or not we can tempt you to come back and speak to us again at another time.
Absolutely. That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Excellent stuff.
Has it been excruciating for you, or has it been all right?
I've been in heaven. You two are divine, and I really love. You're a great match. You're a fabulous match. So the interaction.
Move in together and solve Phil's problem. That would be it.
I was going to say I'm not picking out curtains just yet, but thank you for saying so.
John Lewis and give it a go. Kate, you've been terrific. Thank you. And
thank you very much.
It's really interesting. Here's the thing: that you came on, and the first thing Phil said, "Wow, your hair is fantastic." Now, other people, because it's a statement. Let's be honest. It's like, wow, it's a statement. But other people, if you did said that in America, they're like, well, that's sexist, that's rude.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And it's like for me, no, you didn't think that at all. But I'm thinking this is how careful you have to be. It's a compliment, and I never even know now how you can even pay anybody a compliment. That I find really scary.
So, if you want it to be more neutral, what they're doing or what they're wearing, because they made choices about what they're doing or what they're wearing. And there are also different ways of saying, oh, your energy's vibrant or something. If you didn't want to make specific, you don't want to allude to exactly their physicality or something, you can do it. You can
Yeah, you can say that. I'll tell you how nuts it is. And this was told to me by Chantal, who's our guest today, is every week. Chantal was the CEO of BAFTA in LA. You're not allowed to say, if say you and I work together, I go, how was your weekend? That's okay. I'm allowed to do that. What I can't say is, hey, how was your weekend? Knowing that so let's say I knew you were going on a date. Say I knew you were going on a date on Saturday with some new guy.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about your private life. Just assume we work together.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, how was your weekend? You could sue me.
Really?
That's harassment. That's a genuine example from HR. I'm not making it up. That's where we're at, which is why I think
it's very
island.
See, it's very interesting. It's just very interesting. On one level, America develops things and grows things and makes them big. As a result, sex therapy is huge in America, and it's big business actually in America. In England, it's people haven't even heard of COSRT, which is the main body of sex therapists. So it's COSRT. I know. So in England, and like Phil was saying, in England we think sex, whereas in America there's more familiarity with it because it's more public. But on the other hand, America also goes big on other things and more serious. Whereas perhaps in England, I loved what Hugh Grant said. I watched his interviews, and he said he learned so much from the Americans because his attitude was so English. Just learn your lines and turn up. But he went.
Yeah, that's it.
He went to America and he discovered they immerse themselves. They're very serious. It's a big intention. It's a big art. And maybe there's something between the two. Maybe there's something between the two that can be learned.
Kate, in Marathon Man, which starred Dustin Hoffman and Sir Laurence Olivier, Dustin Hoffman came in and he angst, and Laurence Olivier summed up everything. He said, my dear, have you ever tried acting? Go away, learn your lines and shut up. That's what it's about. That is it. Don't bump into the furniture.
And what a way to say, Kate McKenzie, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
What a great guest you've been. Huge fun.
Really, really appreciate it.
Informative, and thank you for being a good sport as well.
And come back to us, won't you?
Yeah, I'd love it. Thank you very much. Great show. Well done on your show. Fabulous show. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye. Oh, there we go. Oh, terrific. Wow. There you go. I feel
more about you than I have done in the last 20 years.
I feel educated today. Good.
How long have I known you? 10 years?
I don't know. Something like that. Do you know what it is, actually? Oh, wow. This will make you feel old. I think we first met in 2006.
Jeez. Really?
15 years you've had to tolerate me. Good Lord. Anyway. Right. Now,
in kindergarten.
Now, speaking of someone else who's had to tolerate us for a number of years, is our next guest, because waiting in the wings is Men's Radio Station's very own. He's Noel McDermott, and he's just here. He doesn't need an introduction. Noel, sorry, you don't need an introduction. You're just here. Hello.
I'm sort of just admiring Russ's hair. Well done, you. I think you have lovely hair, Russ.
You're very kind. I've been cutting my own hair. I couldn't get into my barber's in January 2020. So I bought scissors, and I have no idea what I'm doing, Noel.
I'm just thinking, as a guy of your age, to have any hair at all is quite an achievement. So well done. Let's celebrate it.
I have to be honest, I did chop into it quite hard the other day, and I sort of don't, I'm going to, anyway, we're not here to talk about hair, but bless you. And I've been following all your travels and everything. Now,
yeah, I was going to say, actually, Noel, you looked at one thing that I was going to say, that actually in some strange way, I have to tell you that pictures of what other people get up to and of their family life and all of that stuff on social media really, by and large, doesn't interest me. But you can tell that you are having such a whale of a time that actually it makes me feel slightly uplifted. So well done. No, seriously, well done for sharing stuff on social media that isn't just look at me living my best life. You're actually proving a point. So bravo. It looks like...
I mean, mostly this last year has been about consolidating my relationships to people who are important to me. And the rest of it has all been icing on the cake. And sort of spending time with my boy, Matteo, and sort of improving the relationship between me and his mum, we co-parent, has been sort of the biggest gift so far of my life.
Wow. Their life-affirming, in all seriousness, then, Noel, I hope I can say this to you, I've known you a while, is their life-affirming photos. You know, he looks so happy, you look so happy, and you think, oh, I mean, you do. I look at them, and I've not had the pleasure of meeting Matteo, but it's like, oh, that's so great.
The great thing about kids, they have low expectations, so there you go.
Luckily, so do we on this show.
Now, let's cut to the chase here. You quite rightly, I'm gonna be very careful because I just want to set this up. I want to set this up correctly, if I may. You following one of the shows, you quite rightly phoned me up, and we had a long, in-depth conversation. Which involved that interview in California.
Sure.
So I'm not going to give it any airtime or the oxygen of publicity. But the point you made was absolutely fundamentally correct. And you probably thought I was going to go, well, no, because I listened to what you said and I thought, this man's infinitely cleverer than I'll ever be. And the point you're making is so right. And that's what I really was so pleased that you could join us today.
Sure.
Because whether you believe somebody or like somebody or you don't believe them and you can't stand them, there are certain truths which it's not the truth or my version of the truth, it's the truth which we need to look at. And it goes to the heart of why Howard Jameson and I kicked off Men's Radio Station. So walk us through it if you would, Noel.
Okay, so and the call was prompted because I genuinely felt actually that you were misrepresenting yourself more than anything else, because I know you well, and I've known you well. I know that you're very committed to the idea of supporting people through vulnerabilities and mental health, and that isn't what came across in your show. What came across was something else, which I guess was more your baggage, and that's really what I want to talk about. Not your baggage, but what has happened around this whole issue and the sort of projections that are going on, and the triggers that are happening in people, and how we might sort of think about ourselves within that context and contextualize ourselves to understand and grow and learn from the situation, because there's a risk that we do the opposite. But essentially the points for this, that it's normal and even inevitable and expectable that somebody would be challenged when they come out saying that they've had certain types of mental health experiences or certain types of life experiences, and that it's one of the big challenges for people with any form of mental illness is to get the help they need because of the baggage that will happen around them, particularly from their loved ones. And it's sort of standard operational procedure that you'll have one of two, if you like, responses. One is an overreaction, which is, oh my God, you're going to kill yourself within 3 seconds. Let's lock you up in some hospital somewhere. So there's that. And I'm characterizing it. I'm over-characterizing it just to make a point. Or you have the opposite reaction, which is, no, you're only saying that because you want X, Y, and Z. And that's sort of, it's over-characterizing, but it's sort of making a point that you could group it into that. And then the other point I was making was that there are other factors involved which lead to whether or not you get the first reaction, which is the more compassionate, I want to help, or the second reaction, which is the more punishing reaction. And it seemed to me that what was happening was fitting very much with the punishing reaction for reasons that, as a mental health professional, are very familiar to me. And those reasons were around the types of issues that were being brought up. In terms of issues of race, issues of gender, and the gender stuff hasn't really been looked at, but it is a fact. It's a fact of evidence that perinatal and postpartum depression are massively underdiagnosed. And they're massively underdiagnosed for a number of reasons, but one of them, it has to be because women are saying it. We're not listened to enough around their mental health needs. That's the truth. And they tend to get treated in a specific way. And certainly around issues of perinatal, which is depression that you experience while you're pregnant, or postnatal depression. Most people know about postpartum depression. They've heard of it, but very few people have heard of perinatal and understand that it's a significant issue. Now, here was somebody talking about having perinatal depression, which is an extraordinarily common thing for women to have, and it's not unusual. Like mental illness is an extraordinarily common thing. The point as a mental health professional, we try to get across to people again and again and again, is that mental illness is normal. Don't see it as abnormal. Plan your life on the basis that the odds are you're going to get ill yourself. And it's ridiculous to try and sort of think about it in any other way. So to have a mother-to-be saying that during my pregnancy, I experienced suicidal depression is not an unusual statement to hear for me as a mental health professional. And whatever people want to say or do about the attachments that come with it, in terms of I'm not happy if they said that about why they had it, but also they went on to say, this person went on to say, and in my understanding of that suicidal depression, it was based upon partly the circumstances of my life. And therefore I chose to do something about the circumstances of my life. I mean, whatever you want to say about those, as a mental health professional, I would say to people, if you're struggling with mental illness, such as suicidal depression, you know, the main form of therapy you're going to get is what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's going to ask you to change your lifestyle.
Now, Noel, can I just sort of point out, because obviously I know that we're not necessarily here to talk about the specific interview in question here.
Yeah.
One thing, because this has come up so much this week, I can't tell you, my job in other radio work has been dominated by it, and it is it really has irritated me, if I'm honest, because I don't actually think it deserves this much oxygen. But let's put that to one side and say that one thing that has come up is it wasn't so much about the cries for help, which absolutely is not one person I haven't met or spoken to about it, and believe me, I've spoken to a few who've said that it shouldn't have been taken seriously. 100% needs to be taken seriously, and help absolutely is deserved. I think that where a lot of people struggle to comprehend is where it appeared to be used as a weapon. That's the only way I can really describe it, because it wasn't a case of saying, I struggled with this. It was, and I got no support from the people you love. That was basically what it was said. It was how it was being used. Is at that institution that you love and that makes up the backbone of your country. I got no support from it. It was terrible, and it was more that was what the point was. And I think that's why a lot of people. Badly.
It's just an unrealistic expectation to imagine that somebody who has mental illness is going to be pleasant about it or is going to be sociable about it. It is antisocial. That's the truth. And it's one of the reasons why people don't get help is because they don't package themselves and arrive in an appropriately needy way. And my point as a mental health professional is whether somebody is appropriately packaged in their needs is irrelevant to how we respond to them. And I guess in my profession, what we do, and I'm not expecting this from from you or the general public or anything like that, but one thing I have to do as a professional is I have to work with professionals who can challenge my motivation, my experience of patients, and I can process and deal with the fact that, quite often I might feel less than positive feelings towards people who are demanding stuff of me and making me feel inadequate and all of that sort of stuff, which are normal human interactional responses. That's what happens. That's what muddies the water in terms of attachments and relationships that are complex between people. It's why, for example, as a mental health professional, I can't treat somebody that I'm really close to, because my stuff gets in the way. As a professional, what I do is I work on my stuff so that when my patients are antisocial with me, because they're going to be, and when I'm mentally ill, and I have a long history of it personally, I'm not pleasant to be around. I'm not a nice person. You can ask the secretaries at my local GP surgery what it's like when I'm in my anxiety or depression, and I'm the one who's more likely to start an argument than anybody else.
See, I find that fascinating because I've known you for a number of years now, and you are, I'm not blowing smoke up your posterior, but you're one of the most urbane, charming, most gracious and generous hosts, as Howard and I can attest. And so it's really interesting. I've never even seen a hint of the other side of Noel McDermott. Let me read something that's just coming from New York. This is from New York City, where one of our listeners, Elizabeth Green, resides. Elizabeth, very sorry about your restaurant, by the way. It's very great that you talk about women not having a voice. The issue for me is that if I did kill myself, I wouldn't tell anybody. I've thought about it for years. And then she adds, but I couldn't do it to my kids.
Exactly.
And thank God you couldn't, frankly.
Exactly. Yes. Well said. I mean, that's the whole point, that if we don't create an environment in which people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts feel that it's okay to share them, people will kill themselves. It's bottom line stuff. Suicide rates around the globe have been rising for the last 10 years. Including in UK and Europe and America. They have spiked this last year, and they will get worse over the next few years as we deal with the economic costs of the lockdown. Because we know, for example, for every 1% rise in unemployment, there's a 0.8% rise in suicides. We know that from
Lord. Good
and
Lord.
It's an almost one-to-one relationship, Russ. So I'm saying the context in which this conversation is taking place is more urgent than it has ever been. Okay. If we face 500,000 lost jobs, which is some of the conservative estimates, almost 100% of those people are going to be thinking about or will try and kill themselves. Okay. And 75% of those will be guys, because we overinvest in our sense of self through our work. And that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So that's the context I, as a mental health professional, am working in. And the context is acknowledged by the evidence. So, the government just produced new resources for children with mental health problems in schools. They put £80 million into increasing resources directly in schools, because we know this last year has trashed us. And I don't, anybody who says, the Pollyanna people who go, no, it's only been wonderful and I've learned to fly to the moon. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Off you go. Enjoy your time on the moon. I'm not there with you. It's been a struggle for me as a human being, okay? And it's been a struggle for other human beings. And that's the context in which all of this is taking place. Now, there are triggering subjects that I think are coming up, but they are more triggered because of the context that we're in, which is we've all been frightened and challenged this last year. Okay. And that's one of the things I'd like to suggest to people very humbly is that what we need to look at this, in this situation, with the issues that have been raised, is ourselves and our own reactions to it. And the reason I say that is because I have learned over the years that unless I have more balanced, compassionate and loving reactions to the stuff out there, then I'm doing damage in here. And that's just the fundamental truth of life. That because I'm not mates with any of these people. I'm not actually sitting down with any of these cast of characters and talking and resolving the issues. I've only got it inside my head, Russ, right? And inside my head, I want to be a relatively pleasant, healthy place. And that is it within my power to do it. And a lot of what's going on at the moment is, from my very humble opinion, are group processes that, based upon the fact that we've had a really, really shocking year and people are processing emotionally in that way. And it's got nothing to do with what anybody's actually saying in this cast of characters. That it's
I've got to share. I'd like to. Yes, you see, you've raised, as you always do in your eloquent and articulate way, so many important points. But I'm going to confess to you and be perfectly honest that interview actually, I realized, affected my health. And I don't mean a little bit. I actually got physically ill. Yeah. Now, I'm a reasonably rational person. And I was talking about this with other people. I thought,
really?
I don't know. And I thought, yeah, I know, begin with me. And I'm being serious for a sec. And I thought, Russell, think about this. You don't know these people. You're never going to meet these people. They couldn't give a monkeys about your life. What the hell do you care about their lives? They're multimillionaires. They give, And I thought, fine, they're strangers. I mean, they're actual strangers. Why am I so in such a fury?
Yeah.
And so upset by this that I realized that for a few days I was actually physically ill. I thought, this is ridiculous, because conversely, they wouldn't be upset if I got hit by a truck, this afternoon. It would be relevant to them. Why am I getting upset?
Noel, I wonder if I know that you're the expert on this, but I wonder if I might dive in from what I've observed, and I'd be interested to see whether or not sort of what I have observed is in any way relevant to the answer to Russ's dilemma. I feel that sort of because the issues they have raised pertain to such emotive issues and such strong issues all in one hit, it was almost like a sandstorm of this sort of emotional, real hardship just battering our screens minute after minute after minute with all of these different subjects that people find very sensitive: race relations, British identity, the royal family, all of these sexism, all of these different sort of matters that people are very, very twitchy about. And they all sort of came together in one massive sort of conglomerate. And I feel as though the reason why it's made such an impact is because there is at least one subject there that they've spoken about that affects somebody somewhere along the line somehow. Now, whether it's because they've or the other, and I feel that it's because if they've sort of done it in such a way that's made people react possibly the opposite of how one might want to react. For example, let's talk about this subject, not to actually go off on it, but as an example, the subject of racism. Racism is obviously a highly emotive subject, something that is very, very sensitive and clearly unique to the experience of those who have experienced racism. The difference is some people who experience it are very loud about it and say this is absolutely not right. Distinctly possible that they're spot on with what they say. But the problem is, to those who perpetrate, that's the wrong opinion. And I suppose it's sort of there's all of these different subjects coming together that at least one person has experienced, whether it's for good or bad, that's subjective in itself. And I feel as though that's it's brewed up a massive storm. That's the way I look at this.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a lightning rod for all sorts of issues. And I think partly an emotional processing of the fact that we've all been so scared the last year. I have to say, I'm going to start off answering it with a bit of a joke. It's not meant to be facetious. This week, I have to say my admiration for the communications team at Metropolitan Police has gone through the roof. And talk about burying news. It's fantastic. They've chosen this week they constantly, the Met, since the McPherson report, if people remember that, about that poor boy that was murdered, and we just didn't manage to capture, even though we knew who it was that had done it, which the Met is, one of the few organisations that has, put its hand up and said, yeah, we're institutionally racist, etc., etc. But this week, the communications team, and they've had all sorts of monitoring processes in place since then to look at performance around things. And their communications team this week are genius, that they've chosen to release the monitoring information on when the Met make public appeals and present a photograph or a photo fit of a criminal that they're looking for. And they produce figures on around a range of things, such as ethnicity and gender, around a range of crimes. So you get the big figures, this is all the crimes, and then you get the breaking down into the various levels of not so serious to serious. And on every level, the representation of black faces in the pictures that they put out to the media has been twice as much as the white faces. Just as simple fact, even though more than twice as much of the crime is committed by white people. And that's across everything. So you've got to say you're not saying that in that situation, all those police officers that are requesting help of the local media and newspapers and stuff like that are white, racist, sort of thugs, KKK. That's not what's going on. There are just certain processes happening. And the fact is they recognize those processes are happening and they're working towards changing that so that, the Met, when it puts out pictures of wanted criminals, will be thoughtful about whether they're creating an environment which creates a sense in which black people commit more crime than white people, which is not true. It's not. So it's that type of process going on. And it's fantastic that, again, the Met communications team chose this week to do it when we're all distracted by an argument about something which most of us are not informed about. And that's the truth. We're just not. There are people that are informed about this. And at the moment, we're not finding spaces in which to bring that informed conversation in. So do you know the saying, if it's hysterical, it's historical?
No, I have heard that. Yes,
use a lot in therapy to say, if your reaction, coming back to your question, Russ, if this is something I do for myself as a human being, but as a professional, if I have a really strong emotional reaction to something, I ask myself, why am I disturbed? Because the disturbance is inside me. And I have to figure out that before I have an action associated with that thing. We teach people mnemotics, little tricks like halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So halt, don't go. So if you're feeling hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, don't act. Just sort out those needs first. Because so much of what we do that's unhelpful is based upon those instinctual responses out of control. So if I feel, as you have done, Russ, this week, that inordinately angry about complete strangers, then I had to ask myself, why am I feeling that? And I'm not saying who I've been angry about. It's irrelevant. What's relevant is I was angry. And then I have used that as an opportunity to figure out what the hell is going on for me and how can I get to a better place in my life, because I'm the center of my life, not complete strangers on the news.
Yes. I spent time trying to analyze it.
Yeah.
Because I thought, no, this is ridiculous. A, you're in a fury. Yeah. And B, you're actually getting physically ill. And I thought, what is it? I worked out that it's my innate sense of justice, I thought. And it's my innate sense of when you know somebody can't answer back, they're not going to answer back, and you can say what you like, knowing there's going to be no recourse to what you do. Yeah. That sent me off the deep end. You see, that to me, on a huge scale, comes down to a little thing that you and I we've met, we've had snacks together and all sorts of things. So, and I've mentioned this before on various shows. If I'm sitting with someone I've never met them before, and we're in a restaurant back in the happy days when we could, and they treat the waiting staff like trash and are rude to them, I won't do business with that person. I will immediately judge how they treat people who can't answer back because they've got a job to do. And just because they can be bullies and rude and they do that, I will then finish that lunch or dinner. I won't have anything more to do with that person. Don't care who they are, because I will have judged them as they're really unpleasant. And if you extrapolate that, that's my feeling, everybody should be treated the same, from the guy on reception to the CEO. You don't, just because he's on reception doesn't mean he's not a valid human being. I just don't go with that. It means a lot to me. I feel very strongly about that. So when people are just saying stuff and they can't answer back because they're not going to answer back, that really got me.
I have a strong sense of justice as well, Russ, and we have a different role in the sense of I'm a mental health professional, so I'm required to do the level of processing I'm just about to talk about. In general, I'm not suggesting people need to do this. Just notice and maybe take a pause before they act when they're overwhelmed by strong feeling. I think the world would be a lot better place if that was to happen a lot more, and to be thoughtful and also to be able to learn and be open to sort of information and knowledge. But for me, I have a real strong sense of justice and injustice, and overwhelmingly strong at times, and which can lead me to act in precipitous manner, and then sometimes and often regret that precipitous action. Historically, I'm a lot more balanced these days because hopefully I've sort of got a bit old and but nevertheless it triggered that type of response in me. This week has triggered that type of response in me. And it was sort of triggered anyway because I'd just come back from seeing my boy, and you saw the stuff I put on Facebook. And I was so fed up of people intruding in my life who had a relatively legitimate reason to intrude in my life. So that's all of that stuff. But I know in me where it comes from. And it comes from the fact that I had lots of abuse as a child. And I had parents who failed in their primary task. They did the best they could, but they failed. And like a lot of people who've experienced, this is not talking about you or anybody else, but I'm talking about me and a lot of people I've worked with, and a lot of patients and a lot of professionals, that we have an enhanced sense of black and white, right and wrong because of that. And this black and white, right and wrong approach to life has very, very limited value.
Well, what's worse is that, of course, the black and white approach means that it's more likely to cause polarization, as we've seen so dramatically recently. Forget that now infamous interview. Let's just talk about any subject you want, and you'll find that there's either one extreme or the other. There doesn't seem to be that common middle ground anymore. And it is,
again, we need to sort of, I think you're right, Phil, we need to look at the context in which this is all taking place. Now, up until recently, we had somebody running a country that shall remain nameless because I don't want to give them any oxygen, who thrived on conflict. And in the UK, you know, we have an understanding of that. There have been various people, political leaders in the UK's history that have also been a bit like that. And we've come through a time globally as that. And there is a necessity, I think, to try and rewrite that and redress that sort of, you know, there's many things I love about the US. I mean, absolutely. But I don't want their extremism, thanks very much. I don't want their gun culture. I don't want their health service. I think there's some stuff that we've got, and I think we can have conversations that engage in finding that middle ground and not necessarily. Nevertheless, though, and I think that there is an important issue about people raising issues about social change, where social change needs to happen. And there are, so if again, I think about one of the issues that's going on this week is the idea of reclaim the streets.
Yes.
The issues that are coming up around that. Now, I can tell you without sort of doubt, because I'm an old fart, that when those issues first came up in the 70s, there was a hugely divisive, but over a period of time, what's happened is these conversations have been engaged with, the evidence has emerged that these are real issues and they need to be highlighted, you know. And, you know, there's an interesting conversation going on at the moment. Should we have a curfew on men at 6 p.m? Now, I don't think that's really going to happen, but I think it's a really important way of starting conversation about what the issue is. And this is men's radio station, so let's talk about men. I recently wrote a press release, no, not a press release, for a blog on Dad Blog. I wrote a blog for them, and I said it's relatively easy to know when men are struggling, and men are struggling at the moment. This is how you know when men are struggling. You look at domestic violence figures. Are they on the increase? You look at violence figures. Are they on the increase? You look at suicide figures. Are they on the increase? You look at drinking. Is it on the increase? You look at drinking-related deaths. Is it on the increase? I can tell you every single one of those metrics is on the increase at the moment. And you also know the final metric you'd add in, which I put in the blog, is that you look at the admission to psychiatric hospital for severe and enduring mental health problems. So every single one of those metrics is on the increase. And I can tell you without a doubt, that means that men are struggling at the moment. And that's the culture that we've got going on. So the women who are saying, I want to reclaim these streets, far from exaggerating, are saying, well, you know, they may not consciously know this, but there's definitely been an uptick in that violence because that's what happens. And the metrics are there to suggest it. Now, I don't know if we need to go into a debate about whether that then evolves into a conversation about whether there's a structured form of political oppression that comes from that. I think people can have an interesting conversation about that. I tend to think that it does indicate that there is something structural and systemic, because my truth is, as a man, that yes, I was angry and aggressive when I was younger, but I'm horrified by that. I'm not like that. I've learned it's wrong. So I don't think it's innate to me as a person, as a human being. I've learned. And there are other men that I've learned things from, Gandhi, etc., who are amazing people, that amazing men that have suggested other ways of doing things that aren't so toxic. But as a mental health professional, I see those metrics rising, and then I see women saying, I want to reclaim these streets, and I connect the two dots, and I say, well, I understand that, and that's real. And therefore, there is a need for some sort of social change that will actually maybe be beneficial to those guys, because those metrics are pretty crap for men, right? None of those do we actually want.
No.
Sorry, Phil.
I get that.
No, I was just going to say that it seems almost wrong of me to sort of cut you off in your prime like this, because you know full well that I have because you know full well that I have nothing but fascination. You ever seen Russ and I so quiet as to when you're on the program? It's because we're riveted. We're listening. We actually, I don't know about you, Russ. I forget I'm on radio. I actually listen.
No, I'm just sitting there. This guy's good, and I'm like watching the show, and then I think, no, idiot. It's your show, along with Phil. Whoa, what's going on?
Sorry,
regrettably, we are flat out of time.
The point I want to make, Phil, if I may, I know Chantel's waiting in the
we're
wings,
not
but
carry on.
I hope Chantel's won't mind. She'll be cool about this. Is this not? Is the real point that I wanted to, and it behooved me as co-founder of Men's Radio, and for everything that I stand for, that after our conversation, to put aside whatever my personal feelings might be about an individual, that's completely to one side. The important point that you explained so eloquent to me was, if you've, and I'm going to paraphrase what you said, and then please put it into your proper words, but if you feel someone is suffering from mental health problems, if you feel they may have some suicidal thoughts, even if you don't believe them, they do believe it.
Yeah.
Don't ignore it. And
Absolutely.
that, I think that really was the whole nucleus of why I was so pleased that you could find the time to come on the show today.
Okay. So
that's what I
the
really
way I
want.
would say, that's absolutely spot on. But the way I'd say is this, that the most important skill I can teach anybody is what's called help-seeking behavior. Because to seek help and not give up on seeking help is what will save your life. It's also what we teach children. I was a social services manager for 15 years. And we can't stop children from being abused, but we can teach them to seek help when they're upset about something. Now, the other side of the help seeking has to be the reception, the people who say, I'm going to listen to you seeking help. If we create an environment of abuse and fear around seeking help, where whatever the arguments are, we're killing people, whether it's that individual that we don't like, that we're killing or not. I mean, you may think that's all right, I don't mind if they're dead, but other people are going to have a consequence. And I was interviewed by the BBC on children going back to school not long ago, earlier this week. And one of the things I said, because of this environment, was that if you're a black parent in this country with a black child, I would like you to tell them that mental health professionals will love you if you have a problem. That's it. Because we have to do that. Otherwise, people kill themselves. That's what the stakes are here. It's not about... Go on.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm being... I know we're eating into Chantel's time. If you want to bring Chantel on, you're very welcome, Phil. I'll leave it to you. Why if you're, I'm sorry, I don't even feel comfortable doing this. Why if you're a black parent with black children, do you have to say that specifically? Am I being really sick?
Black people are saying the response to this situation is to make me feel singled out, as though I'm not going to be trusted. And we have to, as I have to, as a mental health professional, challenge that narrative. I don't care whether it's true or not. I mean, I happen to know it is true. I mean, the figures are with me on this one, and we could go into it. But I have to, as a mental health professional, getting across a mental health message, take account of the reality of the lived lives of other people.
So are you,
not the way I'd like it to be, but the way it actually is.
Are you linking that interview to the statement you've just made, or are they two separate, completely separate
No, I'm
things?
definitely linking the environment around it. I haven't watched the interview. I have no intention of watching it. But I'm saying the response around the issues, as Phil has pointed out, these are difficult emotional issues. And as a professional, I'm saying the issues around racism, the issues around sexism, the issues around homophobia, the issues around ageism, i.e. ignoring children and not giving them what they need, all these things are real. And I presented evidence already, or just of this week, of those being factual things. Whether it exists in the people referred to in that interview or not, it's none of my business. I don't really care, right? But my point as a mental health professional is to say to people who are struggling, it's the fact that you're struggling I'm interested in and nothing else. That's the only thing I'm interested in, and I want to help you.
No, please come back. Please come back on the show. Let's carry on the conversation. You know, it's always amazing to have you on, and there's always so much to say.
Yes, thank
There's
you.
never ever enough time. So
Never.
please,
We like 3 hours of Noel McDermott would be absolutely fine by me, because it wouldn't be fine by him.
No, that would be horrific.
All right. Upset him off now.
No, thank you so much.
All right, bless
Bye
you.
bye. Thanks
All
for
right.
inviting me.
Thanks, Noel. All right.
Farewell.
Bye bye.
Anyhow, right.
He is the most interesting guy. He's so three-dimensional. That's the point. What I love about him, he's so three-dimensional.
He's just got the most extraordinary way of thinking and looking at life. That's what I respect. That's what I normally.
Do you understand, Phil, why I so grateful that he came on? Because it's correct for us, whatever the depth of my feelings and whether I believe it or I don't, that should be put to one side, because that's not the message. The message is, don't suffer in silence. If you've got a problem, seek professional help. That's
I have a problem.
What it's about.
I have a problem.
We're late with Chantal. That's
I have absolutely no idea how the hell to go on from that conversation to this.
I do. I want to ask Chantal some questions as a woman, and I've known her long enough and we're friends enough that I'm going to be able to do that.
Oh, in that case, I'll bring Chantal on, then we'll do the dance in a minute anyway.
Yeah,
Hi,
we can do the dance later.
Hi, guys. How are you? That was a fascinating conversation.
Yeah. I mean, he's a fantastic guy, Noel.
He just
amazing guy.
Stupid. But anyway.
Really,
he looks at stuff.
So full of empathy.
He looks at stuff which is so, you have to take a step back and oh, hello, I've lost myself here. Well done. And you have to take a step back and there we go. Don't know what happened. And look back. Now, Chantal, I know you well enough. I know that's not why you're here, but every single woman I know, and I was talking about it with my chum only yesterday, every woman I know has been followed home from the tube, touched up on the tube, molested in an office stationery cupboard.
Yep.
But all of these things, and I've never encountered one single woman who hasn't had a horrible story to tell me, whether it's and in industries where you think, top echelons of banking, medical profession, it doesn't really matter. We're not talking about, someone, and it would make no difference. I'm not talking about making rivets in a factory and get a hanky panky in the canteen. These are horrible things.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, then every guy gets kind of painted with that we're all monsters. We're not all monsters, but it doesn't help the conversation, does it? I don't know what to do about it.
Well, I think that's an overreaction on your part, because I don't think that as a woman that I believe that every man is a monster. Otherwise, I'd never go outside the front door. I see the police as protectors, not as aggressors. And I see most of my male friends as people I can rely on who would support me, in a physical situation or in an emotional situation.
Yeah.
So I don't see that, but absolutely. I'm a woman who's lived in London for 40 years. I was flashed at on the tube, I think, my first year at university, which I thought at the time was hilarious. I certainly didn't, take it home with me and mull over it and feel traumatized by it. And similarly, I was somebody who in my very early days, when I was a junior in my university holidays at Selfridges, always would try and avoid being in the stockroom at the same time as a certain manager who was always pushing the girls up against a wall and always, as they would say, copping a feel. Now, I don't think it scarred me for life. It clearly was wrong. Those are two incidents that were, from 40 years ago. But I haven't lost faith in the male race. So, but I can see that there's obviously been a very difficult conversation this week, and everybody has got a different point of view. And I would support you in saying that if you are feeling suicidal or you have any suicidal tendencies whatsoever, you need to seek help. And I don't think it's for us to question people about whether they're telling us the truth or not.
That's not our job.
That's a different story.
That is the key to all of this. The key to the last hour is it's not our job to do that.
Yeah.
Whether we believe them, whether we don't, whether we think they're manipulative liars or they're telling the truth, it's not our job. The job is get them professional help because we're not the professionals.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bottom line for it all.
That's possibly where Piers Morgan went wrong, is that because he, in so many words, said he did not believe Meghan Markle in all of this, and that was probably his downfall. Is to say,
Phil, actually, that's where I would pick up on you and say where I think he went wrong. I think he was incredibly aggressive, and as a woman, I felt like he'd completely lost it. All I could see was naked male aggression and him being, I felt, unreasonable. And I think if he'd been measured and controlled and put his opinion across, which he's absolutely entitled to, it would have carried more weight than the complete explosive aggression that came across on screen. But that's just my opinion.
Totally.
And one of the things, can we talk about TV for a sec? But let's not do that. Can we not do the theme tune for a sec? Or you can do. Phil will get Look at his little face. Do the theme tune.
It's your show. Why you?
No. Your little face. Go and do the theme tune. Come on then.
Well, you know what it is? It's
I'm all ready. Come on.
Hurtling towards the end of the week, and this show has been heavier than a ton of bricks. And we need to cheer ourselves up just a little bit. What better way to do it than this?
Right. Now, Chantal, I have a question. I have a serious...
The Ravens are back in the tower.
The Ravens, we're all okay. The tanks are off the lawn. Here's a question for you. And it's serious. And I normally don't put myself in these situations, but I will. And I want to talk about, just from the television, I don't want to talk about the interview. I'm done. I can't deal with it. Right. I was the flying eye on Capital Radio, as you know, for 20 years. And in that immortal sketch with John Cleese and Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett, I Know My Place. Right. The reason why the show worked so well, we had 4 million listeners, was it wasn't called the Russ Kane Breakfast Show. It was called the Chris Tarrant Breakfast Show, and I knew my role within it, and I kept my role within it. If I had exploded during one of Chris's situations, say there was some controversy, and I had suddenly gone away from doing what I was doing, and suddenly said, "I'll tell you what, Chris," and just gone off on one, two things would have happened. I'd have been fired, and I'd have been fired. That day, I mean, I'd have had a phone call.
Sure.
That would have been it. I've been slung up.
Yeah.
So how did you feel? You're a top television producer. That's what you do for a living. Was Alex, not the context of it, if we can, I know it's difficult, but here's a guy reading the weather. It's not a million miles away from a guy doing the traffic. You know, I was just like, really? I'm not saying you didn't feel passionate about it, but like, really? What was that about?
But hang on. But in the interest of fairness, the difference was he was invited to give his opinion. It's not like he just burst onto the scene with it. He was asked to be a part of the program with that opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I was a producer on This Morning, and I would have been sitting in the same gallery. It was the same studio that we used to use all those years ago for This Morning and for Good Morning Britain, which preceded it. And, I would have been the person going, move them on, go to a break, don't go to a break, let this run, let this roll, whatever it was. It felt as though everything was out of control. And I felt that Piers was out of control. Clearly, it was an astonishing piece of television, which we will watch over and over and over again forever and a day.
Oh, yeah.
Was it appropriate? Well, I think what had happened was that the people behind the scenes had created that tinderbox. They had put those people together in that environment. And I think at that stage, all bets are off. You've got to you go with it, because you can't stop somebody on live television saying something unless you literally cut away and you go to a break and you pull their mic down. So it did feel as though Piers was running that show from the front. I think if I had been the producer, I would have liked to have felt that I was running the show from the back. But I think on Monday, it didn't feel like that.
It was extraordinary television, and the repercussions of that will be huge, not the least of which 350 million quid, 350 million, let that sit with you for a second, has been knocked off the ITV share prices.
Yeah.
Just because one guy's gone.
Indeed.
I don't want to prejudice this. What do you think is going to happen to their ratings?
Well, I mean, actually, in real terms, the ratings are tiny. I mean, television ratings are not very big compared to what they used to be. We're talking about only just north of 1 million people watching. That's not a very
kidding me? That's it?
Yeah. I think the BBC figures are something like 1.2, 1.3. I think so, yeah. Unless I've got it horribly wrong. I think we're not talking.
I mean, that's pathetic.
Yeah.
That's pathetic. I mean, seriously, that is pathetic.
Yeah. But he's got 7 million followers on Twitter. So clearly he's got a very big platform and a very big box of toys to play with. And I'm sure he will reappear probably on the new Andrew Neil television station,
GB News,
GBTV, within minutes.
It'll be huge. It'll be huge.
There are so many rumors flying around. GB News is one of them, and even my parent company where I'm at, so in Wireless Group, there's apparently in talks with him. I don't know, by the way, let me make that very clear. I have no idea if that is true or not. So I don't want anyone sort of saying, we heard it that Phil said. Absolutely no idea. But rumors fly around all the blithering time in these sorts of situations. I'm not being funny. As soon as Alistair Stewart was let go by ITN News, people said he was going to crop up somewhere else, and so far he hasn't. So who knows?
Yeah.
He will.
We'll wait.
It's an interesting thing because you can be there are people who absolutely adore Piers Morgan and think he speaks for us. There's other people who not just detest him but loathe him with a fury and an anger that is quite visceral. So he is complete Marmite, although I don't think Marmite would like to have either of those attributes to them. Like or don't like, that would be fine. Don't have to be quite so extreme. But he is good television.
Yeah.
And he's
but in general, winner. I mean, just so that people understand the difference, in general, I personally don't like opinion-based news television. I don't want an opinion with my news. It's a side dish. I can pick it up elsewhere. I just want to be served the information. And, I've got a pretty good brain. I want to be able to make up my own opinion based on the facts that are given to me. In America, of course, they don't have the same restrictions that we have in the UK. And you can have an opinion, which is why Fox News is known as the TV station for the right wing. And it's very opinionated. CNN tries to be centrist and tries not to have an opinion, but actually it's pretty darn obvious that it is lefter leaning. I'm not saying left leaning, I'm saying lefter leaning. Lefter leaning. But I think here Piers had muddied that water. I think his own opinion had gone too far and he was too vocal in terms of saying, I don't believe those people. And that's not really how news should be served up, in my opinion.
But I didn't see it. You see, it's interesting. I don't watch TV during the day. It's just a rule. It's a personal thing. I think I've given up if I do. So I don't watch TV during the day.
He's mainly upset he's not been invited on to Loose Women. That's what spurred the decision.
Well, all right. I'm really pissed off about it. Okay, fine. Move on. It didn't cross my mind, to be honest with you. How would they know who I am? But here's the thing. I thought that show was about giving opinion. I don't want news at 10 or BBC 9 o'clock news. The newscaster, and he goes, well, I don't know. Actually, I think that's crap. I don't believe a word of it. I mean, no, I just want, tell me what's happened, shut up. And which is why I don't watch the news, because then they go, and now over to Phil Dave with your interpretation. Well, no, I don't want to hear Phil Dave or Maureen Jones's interpretation of that. I'll work that out for myself. Just tell me what's happened. That's the nature of news. But Piers Morgan, it wasn't that. He wasn't saying, hey, and today, blah, blah, blah. You kind of were waiting for his view. I think this is just my personal view, because so many millions of people in the United Kingdom feel disenfranchised and have no voice. That's why I think was his appeal.
But of course, one of the other biggest problems with all of that is that if you look at someone like Ben Shepherd, who is a consummate professional and all round, from what I understand of people who work with him, one of the nicest people in the business. You look at someone like Ben Shepherd, who is as measured as they come. And yet there's a reason why they put Piers on 3 days a week and Ben Shepherd on 2 days a week. It's because Piers was the one who got the viewers on, whether we like it or not. And don't get me wrong, I don't personally agree with that. If I'm perfectly honest, on the days that I watch GMB, it's when Kate Garraway and Ben Shepherd are presenting it. That's just my personal preference. It's the days that I watch that program. But the truth is, Piers got the viewers. And the irony was, the day that he walked away from it was the day that finally GMB overtook BBC Breakfast in the viewing figures.
Yeah, I mean, it took him 6 years to get that far, and it was only because there was a major controversy, and it was only because people went to it knowing that he was going to, lose his bottle, and that's what happened. But don't forget that actually it wasn't only to listen to his opinions. What people liked about the partnership with Susanna was actually the
fallout.
Yes, the fallout between the two of them, because the chemistry wasn't there. She wasn't strong enough to stand up to him. And it's in the same way that people used to watch Richard and Judy for exactly the same thing, because there was Needle.
Yeah. It's very strange. Look, Chantal, we could talk about this all day.
I do want can I guess, Phil? I'm sorry. There's a really interesting point from Stephen Marsh. Stephen Marsh usually does fabulous puns. He's hilarious. But Stephen is this: if you can't have an opinion in UK broadcast, well, I know what Chantal. I think. How does James O'Brien get away with what he does? Seriously, I've always wondered.
Yeah, I think
James O'Brien is one of the most opinionated people on the planet.
I think radio news is treated differently. I'm not sure. I don't know the Ofcom rules well enough. But news programming specifically on television is very, very highly regulated in terms of not having opinion that is overly influential.
And not to mention, the way that the two mediums are differently regulated, for starters, is that radio has no such thing as a watershed. You are not allowed to use certain language on radio, period. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. So that alone is just an example of how differently the two mediums are treated. Yeah. Anywho, Chantal, before we run out of time and before you've done all of the work for nothing, what have you done?
I'm not going to say another word. You just talk.
All right. I'll talk quickly, just in case anybody out there is actually sitting waiting.
I've got a great idea. Chantal, all yours.
Okay. Well, just a few recommendations for things for the weekend. We're always looking for stuff that interesting and full of information. And I definitely think Stacey Dooley, besides the fact that she is probably the most overused presenter on British television, I love her to death, but there isn't a programme she's not presenting at the moment. But she is presenting the BBC's new Long Lost Family variety, if you like.
Great.
Which is called DNA Family Secrets, but it has one different twist from Long Lost Family. So not only do you get two people who are looking for relatives through DNA, but you also get somebody who is trying to find out their own DNA profile for medical reasons. And they found out that maybe a parent or a sister has got some genetic disease. And so they then go on their own journey to find out whether their own genetics are at fault or not. And that's a sort of added piece that goes into the programme. It makes it a bit more chunky and a bit more interesting. I'm personally fascinated by...
I lasted 15 minutes. 15 minutes in that show.
And you didn't want to watch any more?
Couldn't give a monkeys.
Couldn't give a monkeys?
No, I couldn't take it at all. I was really... I thought, no. And I walked away.
I have to tell you that.
I didn't moan about it. I did what adults do. You change the channel. That's the end of the conversation. You don't have to get into a frenzy about it,
No, presenters of that type of program make a massive difference. You look at the way that Davina McCall and Nikki Campbell present Long Lost Family. Nikki Campbell is not necessarily what I would call that sympathetic, but he's empathetic because he's been there. He knows it because he has been through adoption himself. Davina is one of the most sympathetic people on television. She's so warm and so sort of understanding towards which I'd actually argue she's the best in the industry in that particular front when it comes to showing sympathy.
You ever worked with Nikki Campbell?
No, I have not. Anyway.
Moving on.
Yeah, anyway. No, I have heard such rumors, which is why I won't say anything on that front. But the point is that the presenter does make a massive difference. And that's what, for me personally, when I was watching, so I've watched different versions of Long Lost Family. I haven't seen this particular BBC program, yes, I confess. But when it comes to Long Lost Family, I've seen the Australian version, which was fantastic. But curiously, I found the American version quite hard to watch. And I think it was the presenters. They thought that I almost got the impression that the presenters in America weren't as compassionate as they could be. And I think it makes a massive difference to these types of programs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, we are obsessed with DNA. I mean, the last figures, I think, from 2019 were that 26 million people had gone on to one of the ancestry sites to have their DNA done. They think it's now up to 100 million. There are no new figures, but the projections were it would be 100 million.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
So people are obsessed with it. I get it that you didn't like it, but anyway, it's there if people want to watch. Completely differently, I was going to send everybody on a sort of Ridley Scott-a-thon. Ridley Scott is a fabulous British film and television producer and has produced some of the most extraordinary movies: Alien, Thelma and Louise, Blade Runner, Gladiator. But he's also a television producer. I think he started out life in commercials, and is still very prolific, very prolific. So he is one of the executive producers behind The Terror, which is a new program on BBC One.
Just fantastic.
Yeah. So BBC One, it's a 10-part series. It was actually made for AMC, an American network.
What is AMC, by the way? I know the bumpers kept coming up, and I didn't know what it was, and I was dying to ask.
It's one of the American cable networks.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
thank you.
So, but good, and they commission good things. So that's who AMC are. And this is a sort of chiller thriller. It's a bit of a slow burn, but it looks really good. Features Jared Harris, who I've mentioned before is somebody I really like as an actor. Kieran Hines, I think we will all know from so many different British police programs in the main, but another terrific actor. And it's about the exploration in the 19th century to find the Northwest Passage. The Northwest Passage being the route over Canada to get from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So I'm sure everybody knows that that's what the Northwest Passage was.
To assist it wasn't for the interests of the humanity. It was to assist the trade. It was basically to find a quicker trade route to make more money. That was it.
So very briefly, 2 British ships, and it tells you this right at the beginning of episode 1. 2 British ships called the Terror and the Erebus, Royal Navy ships, go off to find the Northwest Passage. And they get as far as Baffin Island, where they are last seen by the Inuits, and they are never seen again. So it is a fictionalized version of what may have happened, but it's jolly good.
It's 2 things to say. That the expedition did take place. All of it was true. And what they did, which is just fantastic, is and they reimagined what might have happened.
Absolutely.
I've got to tell you, as I've said on Twitter, and I've been tweeting Jared Harris, by the way, as well, and everybody else involved, I said, I binge watched all 10 episodes over 2 nights. I am now too scared to go to the frozen food aisle in Tesco's. That's how scary it was.
It is scary. It is. I was watching it in bed.
It's not for the faint-hearted, by the way, everybody. It is not for...
It's good, though.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant, but it's
very
right in your face. Oh.
Yeah. As a complete sidestep from that. 2 other Ridley Scott things. One I'm mentioning because the latest series comes back on Channel 4 this week, and that's called The Good Wife. No, not The Good Wife. The first series was called the first series that I was going to mention was The Good Wife. Yes. It's spun off something called The Good Fight. And the new series is coming back on Channel 4 this week with Christine Baranski, who is absolutely brilliant. And if you liked Boston Legal and LA Law and all of those wonderful legal dramas, go back and watch all of the first 4 series and then catch up with series 5, which is just about to start on Channel 4.
The Good Fight.
Yeah,
Yes?
so The Good Fight came after The Good
I've
Wife.
forgotten Shark. I used to love that show. That was terrific.
The Good Wife is also good, but it's not on any of the free streamers at the moment, as it were. But The Good Fight is there on Amazon, so you could catch up on all of the back catalogue before the new series starts this week.
Chantal, flat out of time. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much as ever. We're loving it, and we hopefully will see you again next week. So have a great
Enjoy the weekend.
Goodbye, Chantal. Thank you very much indeed. There you go. That's it for today. What a cracker!
Ooh, what a show! Have a lie down.
Seriously, there's
have a lie down. You think I'm kidding?
A very heavy program, to say the least. And what can I say other than let's do it all? Well, not completely all over again, but let's sort of do some of it over again on Monday, shall we? Thank you to Luke Newman, amazing he was. To Kate McKenzie, who I'm not going to lie has given me a new lease on life.
She was great.
And also to Noel McDermott and of course Chantal Rickards. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you Monday at midday. Goodbye.